about 7 of them. Okay, good afternoon. Before we begin the formal meeting, we're going to have public testimony on items that are not on the agenda. If you want to discuss one of the items that is on the agenda tonight, please wait until that item comes up. But these are the people who have marked it for items that are not on the agenda tonight. We have a maximum of 3 minutes. I ask you to try to limit it to 2 minutes to give other people time. So when you see the yellow light, please sum up your remarks at that point so we don't have to cut you off. Let's start off with Citizen, Phyllis Zona, David Page, and Yvette Durasso.
I want to address the board on the number of closed sessions that are occurring and the items that are on those agendas or lack of. I want to read the government code 54950, and it says, the legislature declares that the public commissions, boards, councils, and other public agencies in this state exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. It is the intent of the law that their actions be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted openly. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may maintain control over the instruments they have created. There was an item today, item 8, that listed several job descriptions that are also on this agenda. So what that tells me is all that information and the org chart and all of those things were discussed behind closed doors. So the public has no idea what was decided there and what you all are thinking. And that concerns me very, very much. Superintendent Martin personifies equity, ethics, excellence. And she was given the gift of 4 months to learn about this district and prepare for the job she's undertaken. I hope that she leads with transparency, because right now it's sadly lacking.
Good evening, board members and superintendents. My name is David Page. I'm here on behalf of the parents and members of Up for Ed. At Up for Ed, we do believe that students deserve a quality education and seat time in front of a good teacher. And so that's why I stand here today, is to ask that a few months ago, this board approved a 180-day calendar. That's exciting to parents to think that their students get the full state required days of instruction. And now come to find that this is actually still part of negotiation. I know that many of you board members are parents in that negotiating system, and I would hope that you would recognize on behalf of your students or the students you've had that this is important to parents, to have students sitting in seats. It's a benefit to the teacher that gets paid for being there. It's a benefit to the student for the seat time. If this district is going to sell the future of the students through selling property, lose the rental income that comes from that, how about we spend it on the students and their seat time first, and work to have that happen for these students so they get their full 180 days of instruction as suggested by state law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Phyllis Zona. I have a daughter that just recently left middle school and is now on to high school. My concern is that she has had failing grades for most of her academic career in middle school. And I've been informed that she's not able to attend summer school because she just recently passed. And by passing, I mean a D in her English and math. And I guess my frustration comes from not being responded to, I've received an email from Mr. Visor saying that someone would contact me. No one has. And my biggest concern is my daughter. I look at the mission statement, and she will not have the skills needed to graduate and succeed at this rate. She has mostly D's and F's, and she's being pushed along and kind of coasting. And my goal here today is to gain her access over the summer so that she can have academic support and some structure to learn some skills. She'll be getting private tutoring from us, from a private agency. But I do not feel she will succeed in high school. She just does not have the skills. So I hopefully can receive a response, and hopefully over the summer she can gain some support so that she can have some success in high school and have the confidence she needs to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, superintendents and board members. My name is Yvette Durazo, and I have a student in the 10th grade going into 11th grade at UC High School. I'm here tonight because of an ongoing bullying problem at her school. My daughter is an ROTC student. In February of this year, she was named one of the top 10 sophomores with a 4.0 GPA. My daughter has been a victim of bullying situation. Unfortunately, UC High School and District 5 area superintendent and the San Diego School Police have worked very hard to represent the evidence and to disregard the bullying issue. In fact, they have not properly followed the anti-bullying procedures 6381. I'm very concerned about my daughter, our safety, and her well-being, as it seems that the San Diego Unified School District educational system does not protect the victim from bullies. On the contrary, my daughter, my ex-husband, and I have been bullied and disrespected by various school administrators because we are seeking answers and resolution. Let me start by reading my daughter's therapist summary report to illustrate how the situation has affected my daughter's state of being. I am writing this letter on behalf of Frida Durazo, a 16-year-old female student. On May 30th, 2013, she came for individual therapy to help her cope with increasing anxiety and fear associated with an ongoing bullying by a group of girls in the high school. At the time of her first session, she stated, "I feel like they are waiting for me to kill myself and they will pay attention." Frida is very articulated, intelligent, and assertive young woman. She has a high grade point average and positive long-term goals. Frida is unique in that she has been educated in leadership programs and assertiveness. A young woman, she has the skills to verbally appear quite assertive and not the victim. This demeanor has not helped her case. She has tried to stick up for herself, and though may have come across to school administrators as not a victim, however, she is suffering deeply from the lack of support to the end of the bullying behavior from one of the students and the group of students that are together doing the bullying. She feels hopeless to get support from the school administrator, as they have dismissed her complaints, essentially blaming her equally for the situation. Her mother has been active trying to get support for her daughter, and out of concern sought a restraining order against the main female perpetrator and other students that were bullying. The type of tactics the student and her friends are using to bully my daughter is shoving her, elbow her when no teacher is viewing, kicking her. Frida reported that a 19-year-old boyfriend showed up at the school from one of the girls that have bullied her and chased her and chased her with the car, and that has been, a very bad incident.
Okay, thank you. And we do have the reports. We'll give this to the superintendent.
Okay,
Check in.
can I finish very quickly, or?
You can take 10 more seconds.
10 more
Just if you have one
seconds.
more statement.
My daughter, like any student in this school district, deserves and has the right to be educated in a safe environment, like your mission statement there. And I would like, the board to, do an in-depth investigation of this situation. And my question is, why is the district policy and procedures for bullying not being followed very loosely,
Okay.
especially by the school administration?
Okay, thank you. We will look at that.
Thank you.
David Irving and Matt Yagiyagam.
Good evening. My name is David Irving, and I am a parent of 2 San Diego Unified School District students. In addition, I have been professionally working as an educator for the past 14 years, and I just completed my 10th year at Hoover High School. I am credentialed as a school counselor and an art teacher, and I have my master's in education. I am proud to be working in public education. I consider it one of our society's greatest obligations in pursuing freedom, equality, and opportunity. The past 10 years have put tremendous strain on public education, as you well know. At the same time that we are packing our classrooms to maximum capacity, thereby reducing the likelihood that students get the individual attention they deserve, we are also raising the expectations of what they need to learn. Raising expectations is a good thing, don't misunderstand me, but not if the expectations are placed in a situation that are not likely to be met. They become counterproductive, discouraging students, teachers, and parents alike. We have been under-supporting our classrooms for years due to economic strains. Now, due to the sacrifices of teachers and taxpayers, San Diego has the opportunity to restore some of the cuts we have made to classrooms as funding begins to return to our district. However, when $725,000 worth of brand new central office administrative positions are being considered, while an art teacher at Hoover is losing her job because the district has cut funding at that school site, things seem unbalanced. And she is just one of 468 teachers in the same situation across the district. When classrooms in the elementary schools are being pushed to 36 students at the same time we have 468 teachers without classrooms or students because their schools are being underfunded by the district, things seem out of balance. When we look forward to yet another school year with nurses at a critically low ratio, things seem unbalanced. When counselor-to-student ratios are being pushed to unbelievable levels, 500 to 700 students, things seem way out of balance. As we spend more and more money and resources and time and people each year promoting a testing culture that benefits corporate testing machines while adding nothing to the education of a single student, things seem out of balance. I urge you to bring balance back to public education. I urge you to consider any and all funds to restore classrooms with teachers. I urge you to use any funds that can be obtained to restore lower class sizes. I urge you to restore balance by returning nurses to schools. I urge you to restore counselors and office staff. I urge you to restore music, PE, and art to elementary schools. I urge you to restore funding for BITSA. I certainly urge you not to spend more money on central office administration. I cannot imagine spending money any further away from an individual child's education than that. Please restore balance.
John, you finally got my last name. I'm glad.
Thank you.
The last couple times it's kind of like,
Yagi Yagan. I
there you
got
go. So good evening, Superintendent Koba, members of the Board of Education. My name is Matt Yagyagan. I'm an organizer with Alliance San Diego. We're a local nonprofit that works to ensure that all schools in San Diego County provide a quality education for all students. And I'm here to talk to you about parent and community involvement in the financial decision-making at San Diego Unified. Now, after mobilizing 75,000 voters in the city of San Diego alone to vote for Proposition 30 this past November 2012, Alliance San Diego has worked tirelessly over the past 6 months with our local delegation to Sacramento to ensure that Governor Brown's local control funding formula, or LCFF, would make it past the California legislature's budget negotiations and begin to reinvest in the future of California's education system, our students. And as you all know, the LCFF is an equitable, accountable, and common sense approach to update our archaic school funding system in California. And it will increase funding for every school district in the state while providing additional funding for school districts with high populations of low-income students, English learners, and foster students. However, the promise of the LCFF rests in the ability of local stakeholders to be vocal leaders in how money will be spent. And Alliance San Diego is committed to work with parents, voters, and community members to ensure that San Diego Unified School District will distribute this new funding on the very students that it was intended to target, our low-income students, English learners, and foster students. So the intent of the LCFF really is to give you all, our board members, the flexibility to make transparent, accountable, and common sense decisions, especially around how additional dollars will be spent. So we will continue to develop parent leaders on the community end, develop parent leaders who have the knowledge, skills, and values to really engage both the Board of Education and district staff around financial decision-making at our local school sites and in the central office and within the school district as a whole. And we're looking forward to working with you to ensure that the additional funds from the LCFF again, are spent on the same populations who generated it, our low-income students, our English learners, and our foster students. So we look forward to working with you and seeing where this new process takes us. We really think it's a watershed moment in how our public schools are being funded, and we look forward to future conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yagyagan. Anne Marie Haney and Tony Young. First, Anne Marie Haney, of course. Beauty before age.
I thought you might not recognize me after all this time.
I was wondering.
You were wondering. Well, I took Scott at his word. He's told me I didn't need to come anymore. Well,
Scott scared you away.
he didn't quite mean it that way. So I just wanted to say I was missing because I was collecting musical instruments. We have 1,200 instruments out on loan this year from the Community Council for Music in the Schools. Some of them even reach more students than that because they're in schools that have classrooms that share the instruments. There aren't enough instruments to have each student have one from grade to grade to grade in some of the elementary schools. So that's that report. And also I'm finding that a lot of them need a tweak or they need more repair, which is sort of a delicate subject, as we know, because also the district instruments are coming in and they're finding that they need a lot of repair. We used to have $60,000 in a repair fund, so someday, I'm hoping we'll get back to that level where we can really maintain the district instruments the way we are with our instruments. We have funds for repair. Also, I wanted to talk about the fact that the VAPA budget, which you have supported, doesn't support the middle and high school music programs. They still have to find ways to buy music and supplies and reeds for clarinets and uniforms and music stands and all those things. So somewhere along the line, I don't know how that can be addressed. That's at the school sites in the middle and high schools, but they're doing a lot of fundraising to try to accomplish what they're accomplishing with fabulous results. I want to thank the facilities people who have found a home for VAPA, for the Visual Performing Arts Department, and it's very exciting to anticipate the facilities that will be available to them, and that was a lot of effort on their part, I'm sure. So that's wonderful news. I think I'll save something else for later,
Okay.
before I'm beat. Thank you all for what you're doing, and I'm glad to see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Young, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, President Evans and school board members and our superintendent. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. And just and Ms. Foster, as my representative for my area, I think it's great to see you up there. Very proud of you. I just wanted to come and reintroduce myself. Really, I mean, at one time I had a different capacity and wanted to be very supportive of this board. And in my new capacity as the Chief Executive Officer of the Red Cross, Imperial County and San Diego County, I want to be, again, supportive of what you all do, because I really believe in you. And I wanted to at least take the time first to say, I really just want to say thank you for the service that you provide. I know how difficult it is. People come and ask for a lot of issues, and they want you to respond right away. But I know how noble you are and how noble your profession is. And what you're doing is very important, and we appreciate it. And I wanted you to know that. Also, I wanted to let you know that Mr. Stover and I are going to meet, my staff and his staff are going to meet tomorrow. We're going to talk about how we can be supportive of you and making sure that your system is safe and the kids that you serve are safe. And I'm looking forward to that. One of the things that we're looking forward to talking about is how we can make sure that our MOU, we have a memorandum of understanding here at San Diego Unified with the Red Cross. Want to make sure that that's up to date and we kind of evaluate that. Also, I want to say thank you to Richard Barrera for coming to the Red Cross Disaster Operations Center. Superintendent Koba, I met with him a couple of weeks ago. I want to say thank you for that, and also coming to the Disaster Operations Center, and your Chief of Police actually came out too. So we're going to be as supportive as we can, and I just I feel really comfortable that I'll be able to work with each and every one of you as we look forward and look for ways to keep our young people safe in case of disaster. And it's going to be a really interesting and I think positive relationship. So thank you, Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. You sure you're not going to ask for something?
Yeah, no. No, God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony. And just a reminder that our superintendent designate, Cindy Martin, came along on that.
Oh, yes, absolutely,
well.
yes. And thank you for that, too. Yes, Cindy's going to be terrific.
Okay, great. Okay, that concludes our non-agenda public testimony. If you want to speak an item that's not on the agenda, we can do that at the conclusion of the meeting. At this point, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready to begin? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone present and those watching the broadcast to the June 18th, 2013 regular meeting of the Board of Education with all board members present. This is our first meeting following the end of the traditional school year. But we still have with us our ASB representative, Daniel Hamilton from La Jolla High School. Has anything happened at La Jolla over the last week or two?
We graduated, and that's about it. It's been 1 week out of school. That's right. And,
that was a real squeaker for Mr. Hamilton.
Yeah. And I'm happy to be here for a few more weeks while I'm still in town before I go off to college to give any input and advice that I might be able to offer. So thank you for the opportunity and the invitation.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. Okay, let's move on to administrative assignments with the superintendent.
Thank you, President Evans. I have the following principal appointments stemming from our community engagement. Oh,
Oh, excuse me, you're not allowed to speak, Mr. Superintendent. I seem to have missed an item on the agenda here. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? We have one time-sensitive item at the beginning, but we're going to delay it a little bit, and other than that, is there a motion? Okay. Okay, second, please vote. Okay, that passes 5-0. Okay, you can now speak.
Are we ready for the time-sensitive item? Do we have everyone? You may want to go to that.
Okay, all right. We have items from Section I, items I1, I2, and I3, which are all related to preparation for the 2013-14 budget. Do we have a motion on all three items from a board member, I1, 2, and 3? Is there a second? Give everybody a chance. It's moved around on the schedule, so if you look at Section I, item I1, I2, all related to budget. Item I1 is the trans, I2 is the tier, which is already
I'll
planned.
second the motion.
Okay, we have the motion on the table, so now we're going to start off with the resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of the 2013-14 tax and revenue anticipation notes. Mr. Superintendent, you want to present?
Yes, I'd like to have Acting CFO Jenny Selkow to come forward. This is a presentation to the board on the planning and focus of our tax revenue anticipation note. Jenny, over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Koba and President Evans and board members. The finance team is recommending the board's approval of the trans-financing documents which are on the agenda, which include the resolution, the preliminary official statement, the note purchase agreement, and the fiscal agent agreement. These are all required documents for the district to obtain short-term financing with the financial markets. For cash management purposes, the district requires annual trans for the bridging of the property tax payments that we receive in December and also in April, and the state apportionments and the related deferrals. For the fiscal year 13-14 trans, the cash flows specifically, which are noted in the documents that you have, all reflect the two key budget solutions that we have with attrition-based model and the real estate property sales. And based on those projections, the district's anticipating a note of approximately $220 million. Now, the resolution does note $300 million, and historically we've structured that resolution in that manner to build flexibility for purposes if we need to go back to the market based on our available cash. And so this year's trans financing team includes the district's financial advisor from Fieldman and Rolloup, which is Adam Bauer here, and we also have bond counsel from ORG, Mary Collins, in the audience. And our underwriters are Citi, Loop Capital, and Stifel Nicholas, which are all from the district's approved underwriting pool. And the assignment of the underwriters are noted in the note purchase agreement specifically. And in regards to the credit rating from Standard & Poor's and the current market conditions, I would like to introduce Adam Bauer from Fieldman and Rolloup to highlight those specifically to the board.
Good evening. Thank you. The trans credit rating is always one of the most important things as we move forward. It dictates the interest rates at which the school district will get to borrow. Investors use this to gauge what kind of creditworthiness the school district is. And so as always, the district is working very aggressively to get the best rating possible. At this point in time, one of the things that we are working with is some of those one-time solutions. That makes the credit rating a little more difficult than it is at other times, but we are putting as many things in place to make it as positive as we can. As we talked about, there's a $220 million issue that we're structuring towards. This amount works well with the reserves set aside that the district already has outside the general fund, and also the months that we plan on repaying it. So that size fits well within the range of what we're looking to do. The other thing that's really important is the months that we work to repay this, that the district have those cash balances. One of the things that both the rating agencies and the credit investors look towards is coverage ratios at that point in time. If for some reason, if something were not to happen in the district's revenue side of things, would there be sufficient cash flows to repay that? And so one of the things we'll be watching very closely and projecting very closely is those cash balances during the months when we have the set-asides for the trans. So with that, we're available for any questions or any additional comments.
Okay. And just for the general public, when we are it's talking about a $300 million trans note. The idea of this is basically the money from the state comes into us unevenly, and in previous years it's been much delayed. And so just in terms of, even though we may budget for a certain amount to maintain our cash flows, we have to borrow certain amounts of money. As the state begins to pay down these deferrals in the next couple of years, we will actually have some savings from not having to pay some of the interest on these short-term loans. Do any board members we've had this information available to us? Any comments or questions, Mr. Barnett?
I just had one question on the trans, and I have not read the preliminary official statements, but is it fair to say that the fund challenges that we are discussing under the budget items later in the meeting, early childhood, cafeteria fund, property management fund, state school facilities, and I know you already mentioned the property sales, are all specifically mentioned in the preliminary official statement as risks that the district is facing?
The preliminary official statement details the budget components that we're going to be presenting in a little bit, and it factors all those variables. Any risks, anything that we know of at this point based on those parameters are included. We must disclose that from a board's perspective as well as management, all those items that we need to relate to the financial market.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that information. Let's go to item, we're going to vote on these three together. So item, we have one public speaker on item I1, citizen.
I want to state publicly my concerns about the financial model of selling property, which is one-time revenues, and also the attrition model in which you didn't get sufficient people to retire or leave the school district compared to the 600-plus employees that are sitting in the excessed pool of employees. I'm very concerned about how you're going to meet these obligations. How does the $31 million fit in there? You're having a meeting on Friday with California Department of Education regarding the $31 million owed to the state of California. I don't see that they're going to be very forgiving because they need money. So if you owe them $31 million, I think you should be planning how you're going to fill that hole in the budget of $31 million. And also the other $300,000 that was used for buying gifts for employees out of money for lunch money for the lunch funds for poor children. That's an additional amount you've got to figure out how are you going to pay for that. Another shaky thing is the Chief Financial Officer. I'm looking at the documents, and it said it was routed through the Chief Financial Officer, Stan Dobbs, but he didn't approve anything. So you've got an acting CFO that 6 months ago wasn't determined to be capable of running this school district, and now she is reviewing these documents and presenting the documents. I have a big concern that you don't have the financial expertise for a budget of $1.1 billion. Those are all very big concerns. I think that the public needs to have more guarantees that this district is financially sound.
Okay, and then on item I2, which is the Tier 3 report on previously planned flexible categorical program funds for 2013-14 budget planning. So these are amounts that were previously made flexible by the state. Much of that money has actually gone back into some of the same programs. So this is not a new action. It's just ratifying what's already happened in the budget planning.
Right. We presented this to the board on May 28th. We had our first reading where we provided the exhibit that you have now as well with this agenda item. And this is in reference to Ed Code Section 42605 that did give districts flexibility back in 2008, and it goes through currently 2014-15. And as part of that flexibility with those specific categoricals, the condition is that we present this in open session with the board with the first reading and a second reading today for action. And those specific programs that we have are included. Approximately $106 million of the unrestricted Tier 3 funding, $104 million are included in our budget as part of operational costs for funding.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on that? Okay, putting the items.
On the Tier 3 funding, part of that is, that's item I2. On the Tier 3 funding, is part of that for BITSA?
With BITSA, we'll be addressing that in the budget solution or the budget presentation. At this point, my understanding is all of the solutions on here, the categorical funding, is for unrestricted and not for BITSA. Am I able to defer to Debbie? My understanding is not under this for BITSA. It'll be something that we'll bring back to the board.
Okay, so you'll bring something back to the board in July that will address...
Later in the meeting, when she's presenting the budget. It's just not part of the
It's included in the budget. When the budget presentation, I'll address that because we are coming back to the board in July.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, and putting items I1, 2, and 3 together, and item I3, we've asked Superintendent-designate Martin to be on the dais with us also because it's the reorganization plan that's needed to implement and sustain the board's Vision 2020 for moving forward on July 1st when Cindy Martin becomes the superintendent. So if you would present to us the reorganization plan.
Teach me how to turn it on. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the plan moving forward and to say that tonight it's about 100 days since I was designated to become the superintendent. And in that 100 days, I've appreciated the opportunity to be in the community and to listen carefully and to notice what's working all around our district. And in about 100 days, working alongside Mr. Koba in mentorship and alongside the board colleagues and leaders around the district and teachers and classified staff, thinking about what is needed to implement the board's Vision 2020 and thinking about how we need to organize ourselves as a system to be efficient, to be effective, and to serve the children. And I've had that opportunity to think about how we structure ourselves, and that's what a reorganization is about. And I'm putting forward today a plan for how we'll operate by putting children at the center. And there's some things as a new superintendent that I didn't have any control over. There's some things that have already been in place, and there's things that I will be leading from and leading with a vision around. So the Board of Education is very clear on our Vision 2020 and a quality school in every neighborhood. So what does it take to actually create a quality school in every neighborhood? And the plan that I've developed is to actually implement the indicators that we've decided make up a quality school. And I'm grateful, as a principal in this district, I was grateful that our board had a vision for a quality school that included more than a test score, because children are more than a test score. And this Board of Education said, we want quality schools in every neighborhood. We want every school a quality school. And we have indicators that say what makes a school quality. And those indicators, there's 12 of them, and I'll test you all on those later. I've become a student of them to make sure that I can build supports around each one of those indicators. So the organization plan that I have is developed on that. The other non-negotiable that I've been given to lead from is a non-negotiable around the Common Core state standards. Those are the national standards that are coming forward across our nation. And so if I think about quality schools in every neighborhood with Vision 2020 and the 12 indicators and the Common Core standards, how can I lead our organization to be able to implement all of that? The fourth indicator is the one that we're calling the broad and challenging curriculum. When you say what makes a school great, you talk about a broad and challenging curriculum and that children have access to that. So the organizational structure places in the center of the organization what I'm calling the heart. And the heart of the organization is the classroom and the children and learning. That we need to remember that we are a learning organization and that every decision that we make comes from that heart. And there are systems in place right now that sometimes block us from being able to implement what we know works for children. And so I designed a structure that it's designed to remove any blockages that might not allow us to serve our children well. And so I've put in the center of the organizational structure what I'm calling the Office of Quality Neighborhood Schools.
And in the Office of Quality Neighborhood Schools, I see our area superintendents as leading that work and working alongside two departments. One is the Office of Teaching and Learning and the Office of Leadership Development, because we know, and this board has stated many, many times, and all those years that I've been coming to the board meeting sitting out there, the board has talked about the quality of the leader in the school, and that the principal sets the tone for the school, and the culture and what happens in the classroom is led from the principal's point of view. So in the heart of the organization, if we want to implement the broad and challenging curriculum at a high level and have quality teaching, quality learning, quality professional development, some of those indicators, we need to put support there. We need to put support around the implementation of Common Core in a way that is sustainable, that's scalable, that's replicable, that's equitable, that I have to promise and ensure that across this district in every single classroom, our children have access to a broad and challenging curriculum. So you'll see in the heart the Office of Teaching and Learning, and you'll see that in that office we have the supports around curriculum, teaching, and learning to make sure we can implement Common Core. And then you'll see also in the heart the Office of Leadership Development, that I believe the centerpiece of what we need to work on is developing strong leaders, and we develop strong leaders by supporting our leaders. So that's what you see in the heart of the organization and the Office of Quality Neighborhood Schools. The structure is also designed so that there is a lead area superintendent, and the lead of the 6 area superintendents, the lead area superintendent is now going to report directly to me, to the superintendent, in my proposal that I'm bringing forward to you today, that I would like the lead area superintendent who is closest to the classroom, leading the principals, who lead the teachers, who teach the children, that you have a direct access to the superintendent. So that's what's happening in the heart of the organization. And let's say we have all of that functioning smoothly, and we take things that might block teaching and learning from going well out of the heart of the organization, and we put those supports in place. And the analogy I'm using is a left arm and a right arm, that a principal to lead well needs to have support from business and operations. So we have Deputy Superintendent of Business Support Services, because we know that when a principal is trying to create a quality neighborhood school that attracts our families to our schools and keeps them in our schools, you look at the quality of the landscaping services, you look at the quality of the transportation services and the food services, and we want to make sure that our schools are safe, so we look at our police services. And those are all support services that are meant to sustain and nurture the heart of the organization, which is the child in the classroom. So I'm putting over on the left side what I'm calling our left arm, and that's our Deputy Superintendent of Business and Operations Support Services, to make sure that those functions have a clear direction, clear leadership to make sure they're working well. And then let's say all that's working well, the heart's working well, we have great leaders, we have great curriculum, we have great business operations support services. We will not be delivering on the promise of quality schools unless we also have what I'm creating on what I'm calling the right arm is our Office of School Support Services. In school support services, now we're looking at the direct services to children in terms of our counseling services, our special education services, our early childhood services, our counseling, nursing, special education, early childhood. How are those programs being run? How are those programs being supported so children have access and the programs are run at a quality level? Having a Deputy Superintendent of School Support Services gives the principal the support the principal needs on the right hand for all those school support services that create quality in the classroom. One of the things I'm also putting in the right hand is a way for our community to access immediate response and support when you have a concern, when you have a question, when you have something you want figured out. And at this point, I want to create that office where we have community support liaisons or parent support liaisons that report directly to a deputy superintendent. Those positions are currently positions that report to, by area, to one area superintendent at a time. I'm really interested in being responsive to our community's concerns and needs and making sure that I understand the scope of what's coming into our offices around how we can better better support our community and what has to happen in terms of response. Can we calibrate? Can we coordinate? Can we be coherent around what parent and community members' concerns might be? And if they come into one office where all the people in that office have the support of a deputy superintendent and we have regular reports on systems and structures that are working and those that are not working, how can we create improvements? So keeping our area superintendents and our principals focused on teaching and learning in the heart of the organization, in the schools, in the classroom, then when a concern comes in, somebody has, if an area superintendent's in a classroom doing a walkthrough, supporting a principal, the parent and community still has somebody that they can get a hold of, and they have support through the deputy superintendent's office around school support services. That's the general structure of the heart of the organization being freed up with a right arm and a left arm to function at a high level. The heart is focused on teaching and learning in the classroom, and I'm also recommending that we have a district relations officer to help us take advantage of and make the partnerships in our community more relevant. We have so many amazing, wonderful community organizations at Central. I worked very closely with Price Charities as an example, and there are many, many more family foundations and community organizations that want to help, and they want to serve, and they want to be relevant in our public school system. And I want to have this Office of District Relations help us take advantage of that, not even take advantage, give a place for those people that want to contribute to public education, give a place, a way for them to contribute in a way that's relevant, that's based on our needs. We know that when somebody outside our system tries to navigate, how do we help our schools get better, it's very hard to do. And with this Office of District Relations, we can actually shepherd those resources, be good steward of those community resources, and find ways for them to contribute to our overall mission and vision, and the contribution then becomes a collective impact. And you have one organization that might have $500,000 and say, we want to help those schools. We need to have a way for that organization to know how best to help. So the district relations officer is meant to work with those groups. This district relations officer is also meant to interface with our advisory groups throughout the community, our cluster groups in the community, that I am somebody who always have said I work for the community, I work for the children, and I'm recommending that I have somebody to work alongside me, because I can't possibly make the connection to every community organization that wants a way in, wants a way to help. And I want to have people know that there's a clear way in. This person can also help us look at the grants and the resources. So that's a position I'm recommending to help us be really smart in how we leverage the way the community contributes to public education. I'm also recommending, I forgot to say something in the heart of the organization around leadership development. We're looking at the relevancy of high schools and making sure that the high school experience creates a relevancy and an engagement for our students. That I spent in the last several months getting ready to take this position. I spent a lot of time looking at the high schools, looking at some really quality programs up in Scripps Ranch, at San Diego High School, at Mira Mesa High School, and I saw amazing, innovative strategies. I saw strategies at the Met, and I'm looking at what it's like for a high school student to be relevant and to have really great learning opportunities, and I'm interested in growing that, and I'm interested in seeing what works at the high school and looking at, instead of seat time to just do your time in high school, but looking at competency-based programs and approaches that are innovative and focusing on what's working already in our high schools and how do we grow more of that. So I've identified just a beginning of that, and I want to extend the conversation to our high school leaders, our people who understand high school reform. Join me in that conversation and thinking about how that works, and I've identified a position that will help us begin to look at our secondary school redesign. But this is not being done to the schools or for the schools. This is something I want to collaborate with lots of stakeholders around what that would look like, but put a marker in place in the heart of the organization around making high school relevant. Sorry, I forgot to say that when I was talking about the heart. I'm making sure I have every part of the redesign here. I think that's it. That's the general concept of where we're heading, and I do want to say that I appreciate the emails that have come to me in the last 24 hours. I've read every single one of them. I understand some of the concerns, and I'm looking for support to be able to lead this organization in a way that keeps children at the center. You'll see that part of in the Office of Leadership Development, that I have put that in the heart of the organization with somebody leading that. Inside leadership development and inside teaching and learning, it's really important that we support our brand-new teachers. And there's been wide conversation around our BITSA program. I read the emails about that. I want to make sure that I show complete support around how we engage supporting our young teachers in the system as well. So that's the overall plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, and did you, in terms of the financial part of it, do you have some comments
Yes.
to make on that? We haven't come understanding the general philosophy.
Yeah, I can make some comments about the financial plan. So in the first time for me putting together a document like this, I will say that there were the original document that you saw, I don't know if the current one is up, but when I looked at how we're supporting the area superintendents and 5 area superintendents with 1 lead instead of 6, and let me just talk about what that looks like, that there is an assistant superintendent of quality neighborhood schools, and that's replacing one of the assistant superintendent of instructional support services. I'm abolishing that position. There's no more assistant superintendent of instructional support services to create the assistant superintendent of quality neighborhood schools. And then I'm creating a position of the executive director of teaching and learning, which is to support something in the heart, the curriculum and implementation of Common Core. And at the same time I create that, I'm abolishing the position of the director of student programs and professional learning. And then I'm also abolishing 1 area superintendent position. So in the key leadership team, I'm abolishing 3 positions and only bringing forward 2. And so there's a net savings there of $87,000. This is broken up in a little bit of a different way that I think we can, there it is. And then I'm also, no, that's not the revised one. Sorry, that's not the revised one. Okay. We'll make sure that we make that available. Then there's the executive, then in terms of what makes a quality school, we're talking about leadership. And so I have recommended 3 positions that are about leadership, and the overall strategy around supporting principal leadership and not just principal leadership, but leadership across the whole system. Those 3 positions add up to about $400,000. And what I've done is I've identified savings in programs that we were outsourcing for professional development. And I've identified some contracts, the $250,000 contract that was a proposal, another $120,000 proposed contract that we were considering as a system outsourcing our professional development. And I have a theory of action that you insource, that we rely on the people that we have in our system and we build capacity with the people that are currently here. So through that insourcing and looking at how am I creating support for the leadership, it's in these 3 positions, and I've identified the contract savings and non-personnel costs that is almost equal to about $20,000 difference, but we don't have to go outside. You know, my collection on my office on my desk is a collection of ruby slippers because I believe there's no place like home, and the answers that we need to reform and save public education in America are right here. So removing and structuring that system of support using the in-house capacity that we have and giving people the opportunity to serve and lead within the system is something that I've always believed in and I will continue to lead from. And then the office, the executive director of district relations, that's to bring in resources. And then I've also recommended a director of special projects. That is also to look at the coherence of our Prop Z. We have major funding coming in through Prop Z and looking at what our district's going to look like in the next 5 and 10 years in terms of schools building and consolidating and what happens when we get very innovative around our school finances with Prop Z. I want to make sure I have a special projects person that's going to help oversee that. And then I already talked about that one. So the net cost of the original document that was posted said something like $700 and something thousand. When you look at, when I added in here where I identified the savings and eliminated outsourcing and will not approve those contracts, instead use those dollars that were outsourced to insource, you will see that there's only a $231,000 request for this full reorganization to be able to put teaching and learning at the heart and have leadership development be at the core and insource instead of outsource the way that we support our children and our classrooms.
Okay, thank you. And since we don't have that documented up, I think it's just good to reiterate that there from the document you saw before, you can see some of it there, but the three main categories that you're talking about are, first of all, creating positions and abolishing positions to balance it out. And then the second part, when you were creating these leadership positions, was to find the funds from from outsourcing and deciding to insource. And then for the smaller part that was remaining in terms of where it is an added expense, it's your expectation that those positions will actually potentially generate more revenues for the district. So I think that's important to understand. And Superintendent Kova.
Yeah, and to add to the concern and the consideration that Superintendent-designate Mark put out there, the $231,000 is further split between $102,000 in the general fund unrestricted and $129,000 that is in restricted or other sources of funds. So the pressures to bear on the general fund unrestricted, where our challenges typically are, is now down to $102,000.
Okay. And we're going to hear from some public speakers, but I think just to comment that Superintendent-designate Martin has had to work had to deal with this issue at Central Elementary in terms of this is the amount of money you have to work with. If there's something you want to do, you have to move the money around to set your priorities straight, and I think this is a good example how you're doing this on the district level.
Could I just ask one real quick question about
Sure.
the $102,000 impact to the general fund? Mr. Stover, do you feel that we might be able to identify other expenditures to offset that so that we could cover the $102,000?
Yeah, I'm confident that given a few days to scour one more time, that we'll be able to get that down to zero.
Okay. So this will be...
Especially with the contracts, with being able to look at the contracted services and knowing what we'll be able to eliminate because of these positions.
Okay.
We'll be fine.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Now, for the public comment, we have several people that want to speak, and to get within the time limit, it would have to be a minute apiece. I know it's very difficult to speak in 1 minute, so I'm going to do a maximum of 2 minutes. Please try to make your comments within 1 minute, and when the yellow light goes on, try to summarize very quickly. The speakers we have, and you can come speak in any order once I call your name: Scott Mullen, Manuel Gomez, Monique Clifford, and Leanne McDowell.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Koba, Superintendent-designee Martin, and all who support great public education. I'm Scott Mullen, a teacher at the Language Academy and the father of 2 who graduated from our district. On June 10th, the San Diego Education Association received a letter from the central offices of our district regarding the Beginning Teacher Support and Assessment Induction Program, also known as BITSA. The letter stated that in its current format and under the current budget, continuing the BITSA program is not a viable option. It further suggested that the central office is considering such options as charging teachers for BITSA and limiting the number of participants eligible to the program. 1 week later, our district board of directors received a letter from Superintendent-designee Martin proposing a reorganization of the central office. She asked for more than $750,000, and I know you guys have changed the numbers now, but we haven't seen any numbers up on the screen or on paper. She asked for more than $750,000 for 11 central office management positions. Supposedly, these new management positions are part of Vision 2020, which creates and supports quality neighborhood schools. The disconnect between these 2 letters points to the misplaced priorities of the central offices as we painstakingly climb our way out of the man-made fiscal crisis of the past 5 years. There are many barriers to entering this profession, and an even greater number to making it a career. Induction programs play an undeniably significant role in supporting new educators. The costs associated with entering the profession are a major impediment to recruiting teachers, particularly teachers of color. Our children deserve role models of diverse backgrounds. Requiring entrance-level educators who are already struggling to make ends meet to shoulder the costs related to BITSA will only make it more difficult to recruit and retain truly prepared educators. Charging for or limiting access to BITSA will make it harder for our new teachers to enter and remain in the profession. These changes would leave a direct and negative impact on our students. If the budget is still too fragile to both pay for this remarkably important program and pay for an increase in the number of non-classroom management, then please choose the classroom and continue to fund the resources that BITSA provides new teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That, I think, is for clarification in terms of what you had said about the district support for the BITSA program. Can you make a statement about that?
Yes, the district is planning to support the BITSA program. That goes with a core value that we hold around young teachers and what it means to support our young teachers as they enter into the teaching profession. And I think that it's something that I've stood for a long time as the principal of Central. I've worked very hard to make sure that our teachers are well taken care of. And the young teacher, the BITSA program is really important to me. I've placed it in the reorganization chart. I've placed BITSA in the Office of Teaching and Learning, making sure that we're interfacing with that program, giving our young teachers support. And if I think it's important that we show our support there, and that decision has been made, I believe.
Well, I think it's important to clarify that it's the board's position that letter was an error. Did not reflect the board's policy, and it was an error, and the board is committed to fund BITSA in the budget. And you'll see it in the budget that the board approves.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Koba, Superintendent Designee Martin, and all the supporters of quality education. My name is Monique Clifford. I'm a kindergarten teacher in just finishing my first of the 2-year BITSA program. So this was a great concern to see the focus on any kind of diminishing or getting rid of or making it more difficult for new teachers like me. You've addressed quite a lot of these concerns. I would ask you to keep in mind in each step you take. I know these are hard steps in planning for creating and supporting a quality neighborhood school as part of our Vision 2020, including the teachers I hope are in that heart, because I didn't hear the word teacher too much, and teachers are leaders. Teachers are teaching little leaders. I teach my little kindergarten leaders, and I hope that we are considered part of that heart. That is a huge concern, and language is very powerful and important.
You are the heart.
Thank you. But I hope that you're not foregoing seeing that we have a huge opportunity in front of us as many teachers are leaving because they've given their all, and they're maybe ready to leave, and there will be periods of an influx of new teachers like myself, and BITSA is the only induction program. That means it's not just to prepare us for our clear credential, it's also to mentor us every step of the way. I can tell you that my support provider or mentor has been by my side, and I don't know what I would do without her, and that's what BITSA pairs us up with. Hopefully you will definitely think about investing and making it stronger. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Leanne, and I'm nervous because I'm used to 7-year-olds raising their hand. But I just wanted to drive home the fact that I am a product of BITSA. I was deeply concerned. We can only get an SB 2042 credential. That's all that's offered, which is a preliminary credential. We can no longer get a cleared credential. So without the BITSA program, we can only get it 3 ways. The BITSA program, national board certified, or go to a university. University costs $3,225, and the national board costs $2,500. This was the only way for me to be able to maintain my credential. So it's really important that this program continues, and it is an absolutely extraordinary program that our district has, and not every district has that program. So I'm fortunate to be in the district that has it. So I just hope that it continues. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Manuel Gomez. I'm a teacher at Choyas Mir.
Good evening, Mr. President, John Lee Evans, Cindy Martin, and Pereira, and some of you that I know. When I heard that the BITSA program was going to be over, I really got very concerned. See, I'm bicycling because I'm old, and the doctor said you better do something because you are old, you blood pressure, and you are getting old, Mr. Gomez. And I said, well, I'm getting old, then I better retire pretty soon. I love my job. I love my students. I go to those classrooms and I live with those children, good or bad. I talk with the families and I enjoy being there. But I know I'm getting old and I'm going to retire. I'm going to be gone. My concern is, who is going to become behind me? I need good teachers behind me. I need good educators behind me. I need them. I am not the only one. I am going to go. But I need good educators. And these teachers, they are new. They need our support as much as we can. Now, in this time, I know we went through a big recession, and it has been hard for all of us. I mean, we had sacrificed a lot. Your administration, we teachers, we have sacrificed. But we need to look at the future. We need to look to have good teachers, well prepared. They are new. I remember when I was new. I was a Beca intern, and I had to have someone behind me all the time, leading me. I can't imagine having new teachers without help. Please don't cut pizza. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moira Albritton, Deborah Beaver, and Emily Neidhart. Any of them?
Just because you don't want to talk first. I know how it goes. Good evening. President Evans, board members, superintendents, both of you. My name is Deborah Beaver. I'm the Chief Job Steward for CSEA OTBS unit. And I put in my paper to speak on this issue, obviously, because of the $700,000. And while I super support your ideas, that's a new word I made up. I'm so concerned about the members that are at this site. So while the principals get to pick from the money that they have, and I know it's tough decisions for them, I still get calls every day from members that are bleeding. I don't know what else to say. I got a call today from a school with 600 kids and 1 ESA. So while I know you need leaders and structured leaders, I'm very excited about the professional development idea and all of that. I'm begging you to look at some kind of formula for classified staff. I know the principals have to make tough decisions, and they do that with the limited knowledge that they have, with what money they're going to get and the limited money. But to have no site tech at a middle school and a 4-hour financial clerk at a middle school, no attendance clerk, no assistant. And I'm not talking about little schools. I'm talking about big schools, elementary schools with a lot of little kids, and 1 ESA. So I'm just asking that we relook in your plan, and I'm glad to hear that the money, came down to $100,000, and if I know Phil, he'll find that for you. All right? But I'm hoping that we can find some kind of money to help that classified staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Neidhart, Garfield High School. I'm an English teacher. I'm
very happy to hear that we found $500,000 in the last 24 hours. That is great. But I, too, am concerned about the new positions being created. I still don't know what my area superintendent does. I know we've had over 9 in the last 5-6 years. So hopefully, with Ms. Martin's help, we can get those positions functioning the way that they should. We have survived the past few years without all these central office staff and people that work outside of the classroom. So I think there are other urgent restorations before we add money, if any, to the central office. There are many programs. VAPA, we have students taking band after school. Our electives are decimated. I spend 4 hours a week after school doing a music club because it's not offered during the day. These are the classes that get kids to come to school. That gets them enjoying their day. So these are some really important items that could benefit from the money. First, the camps in Balboa Park, Old Town, Palomar. PE, I hear the elementary schools do PE once a week. That to me is ridiculous. School libraries, we still don't have a librarian, and that's the same at many schools. After school activities, field trips, nurses, please, nurses at every school. Counselors, BITSA, it seems like you guys have committed to, and I'm glad to hear that. Our classified staff support, we need those people to run our school. That would be a great place to spend the $700,000 or even the $100,000 first. Supplies, elementary class sizes at 24-to-1. And last but not least, our pay restorations. Those things will help students first before more people at the central office things.
Thank you. Michelle Sanchez and Shane Parmalee.
Michelle Sanchez, Garfield High. So apparently we have some money that we found within our budget. That's great. As union members like me, we've pounded the pavement to make sure that Prop 30 passed, that we would have funding for our schools. But now as we're going to start to see new money come in, you're already showing us you prioritize the needs of administration over educators and students. If you really want to support quality professional educators, you need to support the programs that we need to do our work. You're asking teachers who have been taking pay cuts for 3 years running to pay out of our pockets for state-required programs like BITSA and like the new autism authorization, not to mention the new special ed authorizations coming down the pipeline. Before you pay one more dime to central office administrator, you should support San Diego educators by paying the full cost of programs we need to learn and grow as professionals so we can help and better serve our students. I have just completed 5.5 years in this district. During that time, you've laid me off 4 times. I have 2 degrees and make about $43,000 a year. My brother, a plumber with no college degree, makes twice as much as me. Despite that brutal reality, I come to work every day and work with pregnant teens and try to convince them that it's worth to go to college. Help me out here. You want to create new 6-figure salary administration positions who won't work directly with students before restoring furlough days that my students and I deserve. That is why a majority of educators in our district do not trust the district's leadership. If you expect to rebuild trust, you need to make sure that decisions that show respect for educators and students alike. Thank you.
Shane Parmalee. I'm at Garfield High School, Twain High School, and I have 2 children at Boone Elementary School, and you just spoke at my daughter's graduation at MSA. Everyone else here is shocked and appalled by what you're doing. Congratulations on finding $500,000 overnight. It's always interesting how you guys can find money really quickly when it's for stuff up here that you want to pay for, but you can't find it for anywhere else. I'm not surprised that this is going on or that the new reorganization doesn't actually save any money. You're doing exactly what I expected from you, because this is what you guys have been doing to us for the last 3 years. Despite the fact that every single one of you is sitting up here because SDA endorsed you at some point, tonight's vote for $700,000, and I'm calling it $700,000 until we actually look at your numbers. And new administrators is just the latest act of an obviously anti-teacher school board. Let's remind ourselves, this year you voted to create $600,000 worth of new human resources positions. This year, you voted to give raises to everyone in the legal department. This year, you voted for a new six-figure labor relations position. And Richard Barrera last month told the teachers at Roosevelt that you stand by these decisions because in these departments, there's less staff doing more work. Well, thanks to you, there are less teachers doing more work, but we're still waiting for our raises. In fact, virtually everyone in this district actually has gotten a raise this year except for the credentialed educators who actually work with the kids every day. Central office admin got raises, the classified union got and totally deserved their raises, but then you turned around and cut their hours so that they basically can't feed their families. CFO Stan Dobbs was hired for way more than you paid his predecessor. And new Superintendent Cindy Martin, congratulations for negotiating yourself a 7.8% raise over the course of the next 5 years. What I want to know is, when are you guys going to honor the 7% raise that the district promised to teachers back in 2010? Vision 2020 talks about attracting and retaining the best and the most experienced staff with competitive salaries, benefits, and are we going to have to wait till 2020 to actually get that raise? What's incredibly disturbing to me as I look at all of you, that you all say that you're pro-teacher, but your votes, you're not walking the walk. You talk the talk, you don't walk the walk. And I want you to know that a new board has actually, a new slate was just voted into SDA, and they are not big fans of how you guys have been treating us this past year. And as of August 1st, SDA members have elected a new slate who are going to expect you to make honor the promises that you guys have made in the past. So unless the reorg actually saves money, I think you all should vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any board member comments? And we've deliberately put these three together because these are all related to both academics and finance and holistically putting them together. Any comments? Mr. Barnett.
When I was elected to the school board, one of the most significant issues that I realized even before then was the fact that we have very many very successful students in this district and many very successful educators and administrators, but we have tens of thousands of students who for quite some time have been performing poorly academically. Going back when we had lots of money, just 5 or 6 years ago, and now when we have less money. And that disproportionately hits poor people and poor kids of color. They're not performing anywhere near where we all as public officials should be satisfied. And even those kids who are performing well, many parents believe that our children are not getting the stimulation, the level of education that we would like. So this board unanimously hired a new superintendent who is going to focus completely on improving the academic environment of this district, holding everyone accountable in this district, and ensuring that we are not only creating students who are better educated, but students who are active participants in their communities. Once again, taking the successes at Central and a number of our other schools and expanding it district-wide. The reorganization, I think, clearly shows the priority of this new superintendent and the board, if it supports it, on putting focus on kids first. I hear a lot of people, a lot of adults all the time arguing, coming up and arguing adult issues, and it's always, but here we have a plan that is going to be focused, more resources, more focus, more effort, more accountability on actually improving kids' performance, and that means holding everyone accountable. The fact that 5% of the kids at Lincoln are not, or only 5% are proficient in math is all of our responsibilities up here, and all the educators at the site and all the administrators. We all are responsible for the shortfalls at all of our sites. And these have been going on for years and years and years. Well, no more excuses. We have a plan which I'm confident will give us an opportunity to actually make these systemic changes. And I fully support the superintendent's plan. I fully support the reorganization, and I know there will be bumpy roads ahead. I would certainly hope that all members of this district would support this effort to focus like a laser on our kids and making sure that they get the education they deserve. So I enthusiastically support and appreciate what the superintendent has put together here. Thank you.
Okay, no comments from board members? Oh.
I'm going to chime in on this one for a couple reasons. First of all, I agree with some members of the audience. I voted no on the $600,000 HR reorg. I voted no on the pay raises for the legal department. I voted no on a lot of other things that put resources into the central office. However, I think that this is a completely different scenario, because what we have here is that several people in the central office, those positions are being eliminated, and then those individuals are being reassigned to new roles which are actually directly in support of education and learning. And I think that's really important. Some of the specific things that are going to be changing are that the 6 parent support liaisons are all going to be put together into one unit that will increase the response of staff, teachers, and parents about opportunities we have to improve things in our schools. And I think that's going to have a dramatic and profound impact on helping us to identify opportunities and make better and swifter action to correct those. I think there's also other things that are really important. First of all, we didn't just come up with $500,000 that we could spend in schools, because a lot of those positions that were eliminated are being repurposed. Second, a lot of the contracts, I think there are 7 contracts that we've already identified that are going to be insourced. And the purpose of those contracts is for professional development. Well, those are some of the duties and responsibilities of some of these people in the reorg. And so those duties are going to be replaced by people a part of this new structure, so that we don't need those outside contracts anymore. And that's something that I think we've been working for years in San Diego Unified. And this is something that I think we ought to embrace. And I'm thrilled that we're going to not be renewing these contracts. One of them is $250,000, and it's a contract that several people have objected to over the last couple of years, and I'm glad that we're not going to be renewing it next year, and instead we're going to be using those resources for in-house professional development, so that that person's accountable, so that person's a part of us and understands what our vision is and how we want to make sure that professional development is done right in supporting teachers and supporting our principal leaders in our schools. I'm not happy, though, because we've only got it down to a general fund of $102,000. I want it to be 0, and I'm confident, and I will work tirelessly tomorrow and the day after until that number is 0, because that's really what I'm supporting. I'm supporting a budget-neutral reorganization, and I know that we can do that, and I know that we will. So that being said, I am supporting this reorganization for a variety of reasons, mostly because it's budget neutral, but really the foundation is that it repurposes our organization and our central office to more of an education support role, and I think that that's very important. I do have to comment, several people have made comments about BITSA. I have not been shy about my avid support of full funding for BITSA ever since I got on this school board. And I am thrilled that we will be continuing to fully fund BITSA. Because I know, as a teacher, my 2 years in the BITSA support program dramatically helped me to improve my effectiveness as an educator. And you cannot replace the mentor-mentee relationship that I had and that I know that other new teachers enjoy. So that's really, really important. And I'm thrilled that we're going to be continuing that. And that's a part of Cindy Martin's reorg plan, is she understands, she gets the value of making sure that we're doing everything we can to support our teachers so that they can be effective and not have to deal with that. I mean, the state gives us money for this, and so we're going to make sure that we're putting that money towards that program. I think that's all that I have to say.
Well, the item we're voting on is labeled Superintendent Reorganization Needed to Implement and Sustain the Board's Vision 2020 and Strategic Process. So the reality is that we hired the Superintendent, Cindy Martin, to carry out this vision, which is really not just the board's vision, it really is the vision of the San Diego community for what we want in our schools, to have a quality schools in every neighborhood. And I'm happy that in your presentation you really presented the reality of what we are doing, as opposed to a bureaucratic presentation of the pluses and minuses of a bunch of positions, but that there really is a mission and that we really want to move boldly forward. And this it's very well thought out, and I think we really have to, for this plan, we really have to give credit to two people who are up here, both Bill Koba and Cindy Martin, because they have worked amazingly closely together during these last few months, looking at what have been the strengths and the weaknesses of the last few years and how can we move forward together in a very decisive way. So it's really exciting. This is not just some person coming from out of town, as I'm always saying, and just trying to put their brand on it, but it's really us accomplishing what we want with our schools here in San Diego. So with that said, we're going to have to talk later about the actual budget, and we can go in a little bit there about what Proposition 30 means and what it doesn't mean. But this time we're voting on items I, 1, 2, and 3, which is the trans note, the flexibility in the categorical programs, and the superintendent reorganization. So please vote. Okay, and that passes 5-0. Cindy Martin, congratulations. Good work. Yes. Okay, Superintendent Koba.
In conjunction with the vote just taken, the approval of the reorganization effective 1 July also includes, as substantiated in the board docs material and as discussed with the board, the following two sets of changes. There are title changes effective 1 July. Ms. Cindy Martin to Superintendent of Public Education, Dr. Nellie Meyer to Deputy Superintendent School Support Services, and Phil Stover to Deputy Superintendent Business Support Services. In addition to those title changes, the following personnel are appointed to the positions that I will read off here that are a part of the reorganization approved by the board. Barbara Allen to Chief Information and Technology Officer, Sid Salazar to Assistant Superintendent, Quality Neighborhood Schools. Teresa Walker to Executive Director, Teaching and Learning. What's that? Teresa Walters, sorry. Jim Solo to Executive Director, Leadership Development. Moises Aguirre to Executive Director, District Relations. Robert Grano to Director, Education Technology. Jennifer White to Director, Leadership Development. Mildred Phillips to Director, Secondary Schools Redesign. And there are a couple of others that will be TBD that are in the reorganization, a principal mentor position that will be filled at a later date. And it concludes the appointments associated with the reorg and the title changes.
Okay, very good. Okay, at this point we'll have the superintendent's information reports.
I'll come back up for the Tiger Town report.
Okay. In addition to the appointments just made in conjunction with the reorganization, we have, as is consistent with each end of the school year, a number of administrator appointments specifically to schools. So in conjunction with the recent series of community engagement processes for the selecting of principals, we have the following appointments. First, for elementary schools and K-8, Susan DeVicarius to Principal Jarabec Elementary, Lori Sandoval to Principal Weggetforth Elementary, Felicia Singleton Daniel to Principal Bethune K-8. For the following middle schools, Courtney Rizzo to Principal Farb Middle School, Joel Spangler to Principal Taft Middle School. We have one appointment to an atypical school, Lori Bellafato to Principal John Muir K-12, and one comprehensive high school, Hans Becker to Principal Point Loma High School. In addition to those appointments, in closed session, the board voted 4-1 to release 6 certificated administrators from their current positions. That concludes all of the personnel report outs. If I could go on to the other superintendent comments.
One comment from
Oh, I'm sorry, General Counsel. And we have one other appointment, and that's Kimberly Johnson to Assistant General Counsel. And that does conclude all of the appointments. I have a handful of superintendent comments reflecting back on various events since our last open general board meeting. I want to note that we had our ASB leadership farewell last week. Each year at this time, we say farewell to the graduating seniors that have been in ASB leadership roles, like Daniel over to my right there. And we also welcome the rising 11th graders who will be assuming the presidency and other various offices of the ASB at the high school level. I did that last week, hosted by Race Human Relations, and that's always a good event. It's all about celebration and congratulations for the young people that are moving on, graduating, for those coming up. Another thing I want to note is the Chelsea King Run was again hosted at Lindbergh Schweitzer Elementary School for the 4th year in a row. This is a very, very important, poignant event. It brings together elementary schools and middle schools to recognize a couple things. The tragedy of Chelsea King, the young woman that was killed a couple of years ago in the Poway district, to recognize her fitness, athletic model, as well as student model. And over the last 4 years, we've seen this grow from a handful of elementary schools participating to now over a dozen and a couple hundred students there. And I had the good fortune of meeting Mr. and Mrs. King at this event, and also having Steve Scott, a local world-class record holder and Olympian, as part of this event. And I can only assume it's going to grow in a big way over the next few years, given all of the goodness associated with for students, staff, and the district. One of the other key things to be brought up, we have just successfully graduated well over 5,000 high school seniors. I know that all the members of the board, as well as senior leadership of the district staff, were dispersed to all parts of the district in order to be there to officially preside, recognize, and accept either promotions from middle to high school or graduations from high school on to life. And I was fortunate enough to be at Lewis Middle School for promotion and to Garfield High and Mission Bay High for graduations. The last item I'd like to bring up is, as Cindy and I do our transition, I'm certainly trying to acquaint her, introduce her to all the wonderful people that support this district. And Cindy and I spent a better part of an hour plus meeting with Ken Blanchard, who I brought to support the district a couple years ago. And I think many of you recognize him as not only a terrific management expert in his own right, world recognized, but also a huge believer in servant leadership, the way we want to work together as a team in a collaborative, open-ended way. And Ken has offered, as he did, to support me to help Cindy out in the years ahead, and that was a very good conversation. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, and now it's time for board reports. If any board member wants to make a report, or Mr. Barrera.
I just want to thank the folks at Mount Everest Academy and Point Loma High School, the seniors who graduated last week in the ceremony that I was privileged to attend, and as well as my two favorite ceremonies of the year, the Roosevelt and Memorial Middle School promotion ceremonies in Balboa Park. Fantastic, and those kids are going to do great things in high school.
Great. Ms. Foster?
I just want to say ditto in terms of congratulating students. I participated in the graduation of Lincoln High School, Millennial Tech Middle School, and the San Diego Met High School. And that I save for last because my son, Malcolm Foster, graduated. Woohoo! And so, yeah, that was quite a village celebration. But congratulations to all the students. And this is probably my favorite part so far is celebrating, with our students as they transition on to college, career, technical, and taking all of the love and support and the knowledge and the gifts that we've imparted to them. So congratulations once again.
I think one of the more interesting and actually moving ceremonies was the retirement ceremony we had recently, where everyone who was a retiree who showed up actually was able to be there. It explained their history in the district, what they did, the jobs they did, and it was actually very impressive and moving to see the history that so many people had and the different jobs they had and the passion they had, whatever their job was in the district. So that was very moving. Like Ms. Foster, I had and the other board members had the honor of presiding at graduations, high school, Kearney High, and then at UC High, where my daughter Tess graduated, and a little bragging, 4.6 GPA, and going over to UCSD. So obviously brains are on her mother's side, and good looks and charm and modesty on her mother's side. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beiser. The other issue I wanted to update the board and the public on, as you know, this board was able to reinstate, at least initially, parts of the Old Town program through outside funding sources, and had a recent, very successful meeting with the Balboa Park Educators Council with our head of our Race and Human Relations Department, and I'm feeling comfortable that at the next agenda be able to bring back a similar type of plan to reinstate our Balboa Park program, and then also get the board's support to pursue something similar on the Palomar Camp program, although have a lot more work to do on that. But I think we have great community partners. We have opportunities for parents to participate. Many of us personally went through these programs, or our children did, and there will even be opportunities to bring forward where if someone wants to sponsor a bus, $185, and say, we paid for our kid to go to Balboa Park and their class. So we're going to look at all sorts of ways to make sure that these programs are never put on the, hopefully, budget cutting block again. And so I'm hopeful at the next meeting we'll bring that back. So that's an exciting opportunity that a lot of members of the community and parents and staff will be able to participate in. Thank you.
I just want to say congratulations, class of 2013, especially my nephew Jordan, who graduated from kindergarten this year. Very proud. If you check out my blog, kevinbeiser.blogspot.com, or my Facebook, Kevin Beiser, you'll see a picture of him beaming with pride and joy and promise. And I know great things are ahead for him. And next year, my nephews will be in 3rd grade, 2nd grade, 1st grade, and kindergarten. I also was delighted to participate in the graduations of Sarah High School, Scripps Ranch High School, Morse High School, Marshall Middle School, Magnolia Science Academy, and then this Friday, Gompers Academy with Trustee Foster, and then at towards the end of July, Language Academy's promotion. I also was thrilled to attend the Gage Elementary School Runners Club Annual Awards, where it was announced that the school, which has a running club in the morning and at recess, the school collectively, with about 380 students, ran this year, they set a record, over 32,000 miles. And the top runner broke a record that had been on the books for years, and he ran 504 miles by himself over the period of the year. That same day, stopped by Patrick Henry High School to say hello to the leadership there because it was Boss's Day. Had a little banquet there, luncheon. And then yesterday had a very productive meeting at Henry High School, kind of walked the grounds, looked at facility needs, including the needs in all of our hot schools. We're continuing to go forward, full steam ahead with air conditioning in those 2,000 hottest classrooms, and then the full site modernization there. The Performing Arts Center is on schedule, and then also looked at the potential for an aquatic center. Also accompanying me at the meeting was Lee Dolgoroff, our Director of Facilities and Construction Projects, Bernie Porter, Vice President of YMCA, Andy Berg, who's on the Rancho YMCA board, and Byron Weir, former San Diego City Council member. Had a really, really great couple weeks. And my nephews and my little sister will be coming down to spend a week with us the week of July 4th, so you get to see them. I'll bring them up here.
Okay, you just reminded Ms. Foster of something.
No, I wanted to say, Kevin, you forgot something. No, I'm just kidding. What I actually forgot, just so that I'm not in trouble by my mother, she retired from San Diego Unified School District as a teacher at the School of Creative and Performing Arts for over 31 years. So, love you, Mommy.
Okay. Well, we had a lot of excitement with all of the graduations and so forth. One of the things I was really excited to do was I went to some senior exhibitions, and I was at Gompers, where we saw some kids who just overcame tremendous odds, and you hear their life stories and what they did and what they're going to accomplish. It was very impressive. I usually go to the UC High graduation, but I got pushed out of the way by Mr. Barnett because his daughter was graduating. However, I did go to the Met, and for the second time I was at a Met graduation where a board member, another board member also had a student graduating, so I was there with Ms. Foster for that. And which kind of reminds me, I want the Voice of San Diego to run a little fact check. I was there with Ms. Foster. No, because I pointed out to someone today that in terms of parents that people didn't realize there was a silent coup in November 2012. People are talking a lot about parents need to have more of a voice in terms of what's going on in the schools, and the parents actually took over the school board in November 2012. Because at this point, a majority of the board members has a student currently in San Diego Unified, Ms. Foster, Mr. Barrera, and Mr. Barnett at Mount Everest and at SCPA and the Met and at UC High. So I think that's pretty important to remember in terms of parent involvement. And one more graduation I'm going to be going to, which I'm looking forward to on Thursday, is the graduation of the SANDAP program, the San Diego program for parents, for pregnant teens and mothers. And so that's an exciting program that they're also accomplishing in the school. So at this point, we will move on to the superintendent's consent agenda, and before we ask if any board members have anything to pull, we'll go to public testimony. And on this item, we have one person. Let me see if we have more on consent agenda items before we go to the board members. Okay, we have on item E28, citizen. Yes.
Is this number 28?
E28, yes.
Okay. I have concerns about having to hire another contractor to help with the budget. I think that we're going to be spending a lot of money to pay CFO Stan Dobbs for chewing him up and spitting him out, just like we did with Ron Little. I don't understand how Phil Stover's going to find more money to cover the $100,000 deficit when we're having to pay out more money. When you start looking for a CFO, you need to put it out to the public so we get an experienced person that can manage a $1 billion plus budget. I don't think that experience exists within the school district. 6 months ago, you put it out to find somebody to run the district for that reason, and I think it's very important, considering the challenges that you're going to have coming up, that that you open it up and you find a good, experienced person that can lead this school district.
Okay, on item E27, Deborah Beaver.
Deb Beaver, OTBS, Chief Job Steward. So on this consent agenda item, there is a admin assistant 2 position. As I'm sure you're all aware, we have very general job descriptions sometimes, so that people can do a variety of assignments. In the area superintendent's office, they each have an area, an admin assistant, and it has been asked that one of those positions be made bilingual. We strongly disagree with this. The admin support speaks to teachers, principals, and other district staff. They are not required, nor have they ever been required, to speak Spanish or be bilingual. The parent support liaisons that we've spoken of earlier are bilingual, and they're the ones who speak to the parents. I have a very strong feeling that this was done on purpose to, just like at school sites, to keep from bumping and to get the person that you want. And we strongly request that you stop this. We have tried to stop it ourselves and haven't been able to, and we're asking that you do that as the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Board members, are there any items that you wish to pull on the consent agenda?
Item 30.
Item 30?
27.
30, 27.
I'd like to pull 12, 13, and 51 for discussion.
12, 13, and 51. Okay, other than 30, 27, 12, 13, and 51, is there a motion?
I'll move of remaining consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded, please vote. Okay, we will discuss the other items at the end of the meeting. Okay, at this point we have the, Mr. Hamilton, do you have anything more to add about what the ASB Council did? Mr. Koba was mentioning you had your end of the year.
Yeah, just thank you to Mr. Koba for attending our meeting. I guess it was two weeks ago or so, where we had all the ASB presidents, outgoing and incoming, from the high schools.
Okay, great. Okay, and on item F2, we have the 2012 base API report.
If I could ask Accountability Officer Ron Rody to come forward and give us a brief update to the board.
I'd just like to ask, he's going to give a report on this information to Deputy Superintendent Meyer. What is the significance of these scores, first of all? Was it?
Well, first of all, the API scores, this will be the ranking, the 1 through 10 ranking for the API scores, and it's significant to note that they are a composite of many different subject area tests, so they take many different tests to put them into the ranking. Another important fact is that the weighting changes nearly every year, so when you look to the growth, there is always some adjustment to the weighting of the ranking, so you have to really look at the test to make sure that you're comparing apples to apples. And then lastly, the ranking is where they take all of the scores across the state of California and rank them between 1 and 10. So we're really comparing ourselves to other schools. It's a better measurement than comparing ourselves to how we have done in past years. So this will be an opportunity to see how we ranked 1 through 10 at our schools compared to other schools, as well as our similar schools ranking, which came out as well.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Rohde, you have some information here, but I'd just like to ask you at the beginning, what's your conclusion about this? What does this year's report tell us?
Well, and following on what Dr. Meyer said, again, this is year-old data, so it sets the stage to be able to measure how our schools have performed this year. So we're pretty much concluding the 2013 STAR testing program. We'll get those results later this summer, and so the report here that includes the ranks also has our growth targets for the 2013 school year, so it sets the stage for that as well.
So how would you say we're doing?
Well, we won't know until we get the test results back in August.
Okay, so this is just a preliminary measure.
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing this tells us is just, again, there's a slide, the last one, or actually slide number 8 in the presentation, gives us a comparison of how we're doing for the 3 different levels: elementary schools, middle schools, and senior high schools. And as you can see, compared to other schools in the state, our elementary schools are doing better. We have more schools in the top ranks, up to ranks of 8 through 10. Middle schools the same. And then the high schools, it looks like we're doing comparatively poorer. However, I just want to alert you that we've already made some changes in the district that are going to affect this. It's a numerical change in that we have consolidated some of our schools that were declining in enrollment to small schools, for example, at Crawford and some of the ones at San Diego High, building stronger programs at those schools, and by virtue of doing that, we're going to change the numerators and denominators in the calculations, which will bring this more into line with being very similar to what the statewide results are.
Okay.
I just want to clarify, this is 2012 testing data, correct?
These are 2012 data.
2013, yeah.
Any questions from any board members about this? Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on item F5, we have the public hearing on the annual service and budget plan for local plan for special education. This is a public hearing. Do we have any speakers on this item, Ms. Virato? No speakers. Any comments, superintendent, on this item? Okay. This does require a motion to accept this local plan. Is there a motion? Move approval and second. Okay, please vote. Could I have a motion to approve items G1 and G2 on the board consent agenda? Is there a second? Okay, please vote. G1 and G2. Okay, did everybody vote again? Do you have that vote? Okay. And then on item H1 was the superintendent designated plan for review of K-12 arts and Gate Tiger team. She was just going to give us an update. We have some information. Oh, okay, I thought that's what I asked.
Great, actually. Vote again.
Corrections. Okay. On item H1, Superintendent Designate Martin.
Thank you. This is in response to the Tiger teams, the K-12 Arts and the Gate Tiger teams that I met with our Chief of Staff, Stacy Monreal, and I, and Sid Salazar, Assistant Superintendent, met with representatives from the Tiger teams to look at the recommendations that were brought forward at the last meeting. And I wanted to better understand what those recommendations were so that I could integrate what these groups have been thinking about in terms of how to better support students in these areas. And so I felt like when I saw the presentation at the last board meeting, a lot of great information came forward, and I wanted to understand it better. better. So we set up meetings with those two groups to have a more clear understanding of what the goals are, and we saw the recommendations, and the recommendations always come from some sort of a heart of what they're looking for. And so I wanted to better understand what is the overall goal and what are we looking for. So for example, when we met with the GATE Tiger team, talking about the overall goal being for our GATE students to realize their potential through teaching and learning opportunities where they're going to be stretched, where they're going to have access, and they're going to be challenged, and they're going to make 1 year's growth. Those are some examples of talking about what is your hope, what is your dream, and I wanted to better understand that. And then I could understand where the recommendations came from. Well, it's not that presentation, but they went over their presentations with us kind of point by point, and then where the recommendations were coming from. And as I build a coherent, systemic, systematic, sustainable, replicable, scalable, equitable approach to our entire district, I can better understand what our special groups are having to say about how to do this, how to meet the needs of our GATE students, how to meet the needs through the arts. And then I can build a more coherent system. Instead of solving problems in silos and in isolation, I can actually be more coherent about it. So at this point, I've taken the recommendations together from these two Tiger teams, and I'd like to look at the other ones. And I can see that, well, with our team, we could see that the overarching goal that I spoke about in the agenda item around my reorganization plan is at the heart of the organizational structure is the broad and challenging curriculum. With teaching and learning and leadership development, when I put supports around a broad and challenging curriculum and our team works together around how we do that, I can see that some of the things that the Tiger team, the recommendations from the Tiger teams, will fit into the context of that broad and challenging curriculum, and we'll be able to meet our goals of offering the arts and access to the curriculum for our GATE students in our comprehensive approach to the broad and challenging curriculum. So what we're working on is I've been able to think about how I can provide focus, coherence, and supports to all of the schools as we implement Vision 2020, and I think those recommendations are going to be part of the overall plan. I have a meeting tomorrow with our key team that was based on today, making sure that we were moving forward with my support team. And now, as a group, we have our leadership team meeting tomorrow. We have a principals meeting on the 25th. We begin to think about how to create a coherent approach to answer and put some of those recommendations in place. And if the recommendations that came forward are not exactly what we can do specifically with that exact recommendation, I now understand the intent behind them, and I'll be able to talk back to the Tiger team saying, well, I know you think that we should do A, B, and C, but how about P, Q, and R, to something a little bit different, but to still accomplish the same goal. And as long as I'm understanding what you're trying to accomplish for the students and the system that you're representing, then I can better meet those needs as I build coherence across the district. And I'm saying I'll build it. It's not me building it. It's the team that we're putting together to do that in collaboration with the parent groups giving their input, and the teachers and the program managers and people who understand the needs of our various stakeholder groups. So I really appreciate the input. We can lead better when we know better, and the input from these stakeholder groups give us really important information and support to be able to build stronger access for our children. So I appreciate the recommendations, and we're ready to move forward in building a coherent plan with those, taking those into consideration.
Okay, we have two public speakers on this, Amy Redding and Anne Marie Haney.
I have to chuckle. I'm Amy Redding. I have to chuckle a little bit first because it's clear that Cindy and I were at the exact same meeting, because there's so many words in there that she used that I'm going to use this evening about sitting down with the administration, the incoming administration, and to talk about the GATE Tiger team recommendations. I have to say that the meeting was extremely productive. We're able to focus our message on what we want for GATE students. We want them, through teaching techniques, to be stretched, to be challenged, and to become critical thinkers. So basically, out of this want that the GATE parents want for their students came these Tiger Team recommendations that came before the board and the district. And the GATE Tiger Team recommendations focus on developing the main themes, which are quality communication, a quality learning experience, coherence in the program and accountability, and testing protocols that are equitable and in the best interests of the student. The GATE Tiger Team recommendations will be interweaved into the new comprehensive, systematic, and systemic plan designed for all learners across the district. We'll be working with Ms. Martin's administration to assist in the development of this plan. We appreciate the opportunity to work with the district on this noble endeavor and to assist in its implementation in our capacity, whether it's as GATE DAC members, members of school site councils, active parents at school, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Hello again. I attended every one of the Tiger Team meetings and then got a notice in San Francisco that the presentation was going to be on Tuesday, so I was out of town. So here I am. What I would have said had I been here that day, I wanted to be sure that everyone understood that the focus of our Tiger Team was gathering information, because so many things are happening at our school sites that are considered arts instruction. We wanted to get a grasp of just what was going on, and Stacy Monreal met with Karen Childress Evans and had a fabulous idea for gathering that information efficiently. So that was just what we needed. So that was the crux of our whole focus for the meeting. So that sounds very, very promising. First, we have to find out what's going on and then see how we can embellish or improve or economize. Mr. Barnett's favorite word. I didn't mean to say anything uncomplimentary. He was being very nice to me, saying I could spend my time doing something other than coming to the school board meetings because you weren't going to cut VAPA. That was last fall, and I appreciated it at 2 in the morning or whenever you wrote it.
Well, fooled you.
Say that again.
Never mind. Never mind.
We'll have to clarify that later. As far as the comprehensive broad curriculum, I do have a concern, because when students get into 7th and 8th grade, they are strongly advised by both counselors and the school website to take foreign language in 7th and 8th grade. In many cases, because of the school structure, that means that they can't continue in music specifically, which is a real big problem, because those of you who played a musical instrument know that you stop blowing your horn, and right off the bat you lose your embouchure, and then you get involved in other things. And our son stopped blowing his horn one semester and never took it out of the case again, so I have a personal experience with that.
Did you give it away to somebody else?
No, I sold it to a friend's son at a good price years ago. No, I would have kept it for our instrument loan program, but that was the Middle Ages long ago, so I didn't know. I would wish I had it now. In any case, just as foreign language requires consistent instruction, you have to have, you're building on a foundation. You can't come and go when you're involved with developing your skills on a musical instrument. So we can't have this gap. And in one of our middle schools, we have one period of 6th grade music funded in a large school. And that's because the students are not signed up for during the school day for instruction. The teacher has raised the money to have 7th and 8th grade students come after school. He had 100 students this last year, instructing them with the money that he raised with fundraising. So that's not going to continue, I'm afraid. But anyway, that needs to be addressed. We need to see how we can get consistent instruction and opportunities. Students can meet their needs for foreign language in high school. All 3 of our children did, and did very well. I'd like to brag about them, but I'll do that another day. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on to item I-4, which is the first reading of the adoption of the 2013-14 budget. We have the information there, and we have public speakers here. And a couple of issues here, which I'm sure we'll be bringing up, is the fact that the state approved the budget, the legislature approved the budget on Saturday morning, so the staff obviously hasn't had time to make all the corrections, and the governor still has to sign it. So this is a preliminary which will be revised in July. And I just want to remind people who may be watching that when they're asking about Proposition 30, sometimes people have short memories. If we had not passed Proposition 30, this school year would have stopped 1 month earlier. So in terms of people knowing what was the benefit of voting for Proposition 30, one of the things we had was we would have stopped this school year during the month of May. And one of the things when I was talking with staff about the money coming in, the plan is basically between now and the year 2020 for us to, over the next 8 years or so, to get up to the level where we were at 5 years ago in the year 2007-8. So it's the money's gradually going to come in. So Superintendent, go ahead.
Thank you, President Evans. Tonight is the first reading of the board adoption of the 13-14 budget. As such, it is intended just to update the board, take feedback from the board and from any community members that wish to provide testimony, and to, I think, expand on President Evans's comments about change. The governor has yet to complete his review of the legislator's budget. He has between now and the end of June to what they call blue pen to make some line item vetoes. So even as we talk about the budget, it is still not a final budget at the state level, pending the governor's decision-making. So with that in mind and based on guidance from the county office, what our acting CFO, Jenny Selko, is going to brief you on is a budget which is built on current law. Every year there is the debate, why did the numbers change? And I think for the board, you all understand the fluidity, but sometimes our community members don't follow the entire story. The governor's January budget included the LCFF, the dramatic change reforming of finance for education. That's the local control funding formula. But from the moment that he introduced it to the legislature engaged on the discussion, there have been changes in that element that we'll be bringing back to the board. Since May, there have been changes with the introduction of funding for Common Core, planning, professional development, and so on. And that change builds on change to the point where you have to, at a point in time, adopt, or at least go through a first, second reading and adopt the budget. And that's what we're trying to do in the next 8 or 9 days, with the clear recognition that we will have to come back to the board in July, and amend the budget that you're going to adopt next week. And this will be about the third time in 4 or 5 years we've had to do that because of the 11th hour changes that occur with the very fluid cycle. This budget is based on law. We will update it. It is aimed to fully support Superintendent-designate Martin's vision, her reorganization, the positions that we want to fulfill, the pursuit of a variety of initiatives, some talked about tonight, ranging from the BITSA program to the Tiger Team requirements. It complies with what the county office has asked us to do to provide for an acceptable report. So I'm going to turn this over to Jenny to brief you on. It's about 20 pages. At the end, she's going to highlight the timeline in front of us and be prepared to respond to your inquiries. Jenny?
Thank you, Superintendent Koba. As Superintendent Koba referenced, this is the purpose of tonight's presentation. It is the first reading of the district's fiscal year 13-14 budget, and it is based on the information that we had last week from the state level, as well as from the guidance that we received from the San Diego County Office of Education. And the areas that we'll be highlighting tonight are the implications of the state budget, the multi-year assumptions and budget uncertainties, the superintendent's recommended budget, and as we mentioned earlier, with the cash flow and the tax and revenue anticipation notes and the loan implications, and also the next steps in the process. As Superintendent Koba noted earlier, one day prior to the constitutional deadline, the state legislature, the Assembly, and the Senate did pass and approve the 13-14 state budget with also the local control funding formula model. Based on that information and also with the execution of the deliverables that we have to do in finance in compliance with public noticing requirements and also the requirements that we have with the County Office of Ed, as Superintendent Koba COBA noted, all the revenues were based on current law, what we knew at that time, specifically with a no hold harmless for categorical and other programming funding. So it was not built in with the local control funding formula being implemented. And again, the district does build the budget based on the San Diego County Office of Ed guidance, which was issued on a letter dated on May 31st that provides the specifics that we need to execute that budget. And also, as in prior year, where we had last year with the agreement with the teachers, we will be coming back to the board in July when we have the specifics from the governor's approved budget. We've been working very closely, the finance team, with Martha Alvarez, the district's legislative director, who's here today as well to address any questions regarding the specifics as to what it means from the 8-year implementation, the specific percentages to accomplish that, and how that will impact the district. So we'll return back within that 45-day window from a state budget adoption with any significant changes. And also at the same time, we'll have the opportunity to vet it with stakeholders, any of those changes. And another item to note, aside from the numbers, is also the accountability component of the governor's budget, and that's something that we'll be exploring as well, and looking at the impacts of what it means from from those components. Moving on, sorry, to this particular slide. In preparing our budget, it is our 6th straight year of budget shortfalls. It is the fiscal reality that the district has had to adapt to. So our first reading does provide the budget assumptions and fiscal realities, and it highlights the multi-year projections, again, based on current law. And the one-time solutions create the multi-year challenges that we've discussed. And we're utilizing the real estate sales based on board direction of $97 million, as well as attrition-based model of $27.8 million. And those solutions have been included in our budget, and as we mentioned earlier, as well as our trans and our cash flow projections. And so based on that information, and as we'll show in subsequent slides, our out years for 14-15 and 15-16 respectively do demonstrate deficit shortfalls that we need to address, and with limited options to solve those budget gaps. So we'll have to address budget solutions accordingly. This particular slide is a snapshot of showing the year-over-year budget shortfalls that the district has had to address starting in 2010 and what we're projecting through 15-16. And the key takeaway from this slide is the ongoing solutions that is going to be required to minimize those deficits in the out years. On the next slide, again, it's reemphasizing the guidance and the recommendations that we follow from the San Diego County Office of Ed. Some of the key components or elements that they look for and highlight is the deficit factor, which is noted at 22.27 from the county's perspective. Also, the cost of living adjustments for those particular years of 13-14, 14-15, and 15-16, which are all the 3 years that we need to report to the county. And any changes from those numbers requires a contingency plan or a reserve to address those assumptions. And the next couple slides detail each of those elements that go into building the budget, and this particular slide notes the multi-year assumptions, specifically the revenues. Noting the district-wide ADA, those numbers are provided by the district's demographer that we have for those 3 years. As you can see, there is a declining element to that. Our COLA for those particular 3 years are again noted by and directed by the County Office of Ed. And we also have another item I'd like to note here for class size reduction. Again, based on current law, our assumptions reduce that CSR that's eligible by $9 million. And assuming that the budget is approved by the governor, we'll reinstate that $9 million, which is one of those changes that we'll bring back to you in July with that particular item. So again, it's a moving piece until we have everything finalized from the state level. The next slide is the multi-year assumptions, specifically addressing the expenditures. As noted here, and particularly the out years for 14-15 and 15-16, it indicates the restoration of the furloughs and any deferred raises, and also the step-in columns that we have built in, and the salary increases for each of the respective bargaining units. And again, for AASD, that item reflects reduced work year restoration, and to point out that was an item that was agreed upon in last year's agreement with that bargaining unit. And for health and welfare, that item is reflective of the utilization rates that we have with VEBA, as well as a component that we have factored in with the Affordable Care Act that takes effect January 1st, 2014. On to the next slide with the expenditures. As you can see, those deficits for each of the years from ranging from $88.2 million for 13-14 to increasing to $100 million, and then decreasing to for 15-16, $54 million. And I'll note that in a subsequent slide as well, the specifics with the changes. Again, this is Consumer Price Index. This is standard percentages that we built into the budget. But most notably, what I want to point out on this slide is the contributions. The changes that we have, for example, for special ed from 13-14 to 14-15 is reflecting those restoration of salaries and raises and step-in column. And also for the routine restricted maintenance, you see a significant jump from 15.1 to 31.1. That's reflective of the monies that the state school facilities can no longer sustain supporting, that must be transferred back to the general fund to maintain that part of the program. And in regards to transportation, it is flat in those particular years, but going from 12-13 to 13-14, it's reflecting a $3 million additional contribution from the GFU due to special ed reduction of services and costs, and also impacts related to the raises and furloughs. And this last assumption page is our reserve requirements. Again, as the board is aware, we have economic uncertainties that we must meet at 2%, and it's noted there for each of the respective years, ranging from $22 million to $19 million. Also, our set-asides and reserves. The components that make up those amounts, for example, include contributions at school sites, which are designated for a specific purpose, and also dedicated amounts for other items. So they have a specific purpose on the use. We've also noted on here in terms of ending fund balance and how it'll address a future year's deficits. We have the carryover from the property sales. As mentioned earlier, we do have $97 million of property sales for the year. We're using a portion of that, 36.6, to help for the subsequent 14-15 year. And for the superintendent's recommended budget, the superintendent's recommended budget accomplishes the following important goals. It balances the budget, provides for a balanced budget. It manages the multi-year deficits. It supports a successful trans issuance, which we're expecting in mid-July. Again, it also maintains the state-required 2% minimum reserve level and the board fund policy that we have in place. It aligns with the guidance provided by the County Office of Ed, specifically the memo on May 31st. And also, as mentioned earlier with Superintendent-designate Cindy Martin, it aligns to her vision for quality schools and her vision for quality teacher support, as we referenced earlier, which is the BITSA program. And it includes the Tier 3 flexibility resources, which is a previous agenda item as well, of about $104 million of the $106 million eligible. And this graph here just gives you a snapshot, a side-by-side comparison, and this is total general all funds together, kind of giving you the comparable there. And the most notable item change is looking at total other funds, where you see from 12-13 to 13-14 goes from $746 million to about $1.2 billion, and that's reflective of the $530 million issuance that we had with Prop Z. So that's what that component entails. sales. And it also reflects that, as President Evans mentioned earlier, with the Prop 30 passing, we do have approximately $32 million. So that's reflected in there as well. And there is some slight changes that we've had to note for the federal sequestration as well. And the next couple slides reflect, again, another graphical presentation of the total general fund, side-by-side comparison what we had for the revised budget at 12-13 and what we have for the proposed budget for 13-14. Key items and deltas there in those categories is the reserves. As mentioned earlier, you see a jump there that's reflective of the property sales that we have in the ending fund balance for the 14-15 year. We also have some changes in the books and supplies, and that's due to some school discretionary changes in the allocation, changes in school donations, and also the impact of sequestration and expiring grants.
Sorry. How do you anticipate utilities, so the utilities you don't really expect to go down, though I assume it's the other indirect costs?
It's a reduction of the amount that we can charge out. You can see from the utilities and also the capital outlay. It's some of the charge outs that we can do from the general fund to that are related to the Prop Z program. So that's what's incorporated in there in the indirects and other. So it's not necessarily utilities.
Thank you.
So this graph is the total, and the next two break it out between our unrestricted fund and also our restricted fund. This just specifically notes the same items as before, just more in alignment with that particular area that's separated. Again, noting the property sales for reserves, the allocations under books and supplies, and the utilities and indirects. And that one, in that case, does go up as for telephone. We're expecting an increase related to that. And for the restricted fund, which is the next slide, this is, again, we were mentioning that the key changes with books and supplies, it's related to those expiring grants, which are, again, for a specific purpose under the restricted fund, the impact that were from sequestration, any programmatic changes that's anticipated, and also the delta between that you can see with utilities column, which is indirects and other, and capital outlay, again, emphasizes the work from Prop Z that can be allocated out. Okay, the next slide is the other restricted funds that we're required to also report on. Each one is itemized there for your reference. Standard in terms of the key, probably most notable change there is our Fund 21, which is our building fund, which includes our Prop S and our Prop Z issuance. From in terms of revenue, obviously we just went out to the market in April, so you have a beginning fund balance, and that's what we're going to be drawing upon over the next few years, and the facilities plan and Lee Dolgoroff and his team will be using. We've got that noted there, so that's why you see a smaller amount. In regards to Prop S, was not accounted for in terms of revenue at this point because we're waiting to look at assessed values from the county's perspective, and we'll be evaluating that to see if we can go out to market, and we'll be bringing that to the board in the near future.
I had a couple questions on this page. Should I ask them now?
Yeah.
The Fund 20 Special Reserve Post-Employment Benefits, is that the $1.5 million? Is that the fund for the potential health fund if there's layoffs, or is this different?
That's included in the set aside. So that $8 million that I showed on a previous slide, we have $3 million set aside, and that's in accordance with the agreement that was approved last year with SDEA. So this particular fund is for our current retirees that we have, and the stipends that we pay per their contract.
Okay, and then why do we have ending balances on redevelopment funds? Why are we not spending those?
We do, if you could see on that particular line item, it's the timing of the monies. Last year we received monies in the June timeframe. Now that how the RDAs were dissolved, we now receive payments in January and June. So when we start off the year with a significantly large balance at the end of June, which is then used the subsequent year. So that's why it's a little bit higher.
And I think it's worth pointing out that we'll see the actual ending balances for this year when we run the unaudited actuals in August and report them out in September. So it is a part of the moving target that we consider.
Thank you.
Okay. And from a budget perspective, other fund challenges that we need to keep, from a risk perspective and a programmatic perspective is our early childhood education program, which is our Fund 12. Key areas that to address or continue to review ongoing is our low enrollment within that program, and also some other risk factors, reduced funding from the state and other grantors. We've been working with the CDE as well as our grantors who've been impacted with sequestration. So that then is passed on to the district as well.
Some of these we maybe have more confidence that will occur or not. For instance, the property management fund, assuming the sales go through, then we can determine exactly what we think the loss of revenues, ongoing revenues, will
Right.
be.
Based on the current property sales that we have, we're expecting about a $3.3 million loss based on what we have currently and those particular properties that are slated for sale.
But for instance, the cafeteria fund, we might know very quickly, or it might be a while, whether we know whether or not that's an impact on the budget or not. So is that, assuming a worst-case scenario, are we proposing that there's a loss is that loss of funds in the budget, the
At this point, it's not incorporated into the budget because there are ongoing discussions with the state regarding that matter, regarding the items that they've noted in their findings. We're actually going on Friday, a few representatives from the district to discuss that with the CDE. So from a reporting standpoint for budget and also for generally accepted accounting principles and disclosures we need to have for our audited financials and also for our preliminary official statement, there's nothing at this point that we would note as a liability or obligation because those are ongoing discussions.
So we may, when the final budget comes next week, or the 25th, then we might know whether that's more
If
clear-cut or
there
not.
is, based on those discussions, and if we get some more concrete information, any changes, we would come back to you and to the board in July with any changes, which would incorporate whether it's revenue and the LCFF or any other programs from a revenue or an expenditure standpoint. So as you mentioned, property management, and then the State School Facilities Fund, that's an area, as mentioned in a previous slide, the fund can no longer sustain the ongoing expenditures, so we have about $16 million that is transferred back in 14-15 to the general fund. And the multi-year assumptions, the uncertainties, at the time that we provided this information, it was based prior to the Senate and the Assembly approving the budget on Friday. Based at the time, they had a current compromise and what it would mean to the district. Based on those elements of the base grant, the concentration grant, the supplemental grant, we were looking at perhaps about a $1 million impact to the district over that implementation period of 8 years. We do have Martha Alvarez here, and we can address those questions after the presentation, and she can go into detail of what those changes mean and those specifics. Also, from an enrollment decline perspective, we're working closely with our demographer. Those are numbers that we build into our calculations. It's obviously dependent from an enrollment and then subsequently to an ADA perspective. And also, we're going to be closely monitoring the attrition model, the materialization of those savings, and also the completion of the real estate sales. Again, those are key board-approved strategies that we've incorporated into this budget and also our trans cash flow.
One thing I'd maybe ask academic or educational staff to look at as with finance is, I know each year we have requests for children who don't meet the deadlines for kindergarten to allow them in, depending on, and I don't know what the discretion is, and I believe there might be some 300 or so out there now. And obviously, we shouldn't let kids go into kindergarten just because we might make $1.5 million off them. On the other hand, if parents feel that their kids are ready, so I'd like maybe staff to look into what the criteria is for determining whether or not we do allow them in, and then obviously there could be a financial impact.
We can
for
do
the-
that, and transitional kindergarten may help with that as well.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. The next slide provides a snapshot. It's what we consider a profit and loss in essence, or a financial statement that has our current estimated actuals for 12-13, and then our budget for 13-14, and the 2 out-year projections that we have to provide again in compliance with county requirements. As you can see, our shortfall for 14-15 is $100.8 million. Our 15-16 shortfall is $54.3. Now again, this can change based on the calculations with LCFF and where that materializes. We've been working closely with Martha because of the Department of Finance percentages and what we have now and what it could be from that implementation period. So any additional revenues will definitely offset those current shortfalls and help us in those particular years. And based just on current percentages and numbers, it could range from 35 million, and this is just high level based on what we know now, for 1 year to up to 70 plus million. But those are the numbers we're going to be refining over the next few weeks and then finalizing that in July. This slide is a graphical presentation of what the trans looks like by taking the trans, the $220 million resolution that the board approved earlier. We're all in the green, looks good, gets us through. Again, it's that bridging period through the summer months when we don't have those tax monies, or if we have any deferral payments that are delayed. It helps get us through from a payroll standpoint, and also any vendors and just our day-to-day operations so that we can make those obligations. And without the trans, this is what we're in the red for those particular months. So those are the cash shortfall periods. In terms of next steps, we're going to be bringing back on June 25th a second reading and where it's required board action, again based on what we know in terms of the deliverables to turn things around, and us preparing the SACS report for the county. It'll be pretty much the same information. We'll be bringing back a revised budget once we know where things finalize with LCFF, and hopefully we'll have the governor approve it by then, and we'll bring another a revised budget on July 30th. But in between the 25th and the 30th, we have to submit a budget to the County Office of Ed by June 30th. We also have to start implementation of our budget solutions starting July 1st, and we're expecting to go to the market as well as our credit agencies for the trans in mid-July. Is there any
If
questions?
I could summarize and open it up for questions from the board. We built the agenda tonight to show you the sequence, starting with the trans note that had to be adopted by the board, authorization to $300 million, actual application $220 million, or in that range, just because we have to accommodate the first 3 to 5 months of the school year with the shortcomings of the allocations from the state. Second part of that sequencing was, you saw the Tier 3 insertion into the budget to apply all of the needs of the district. And I think the third piece that got connected in the sequencing of the presentation was the reorganization to show how we moved positions and are going to have that focus. We clearly have a very, very, very challenging budget. We must aggressively pursue the attrition model through the next 60 to 90 days, and we must aggressively pursue the property sales. And in the years to come, substitute out the one-time fixes for the recurring sustainable strategies. I think we all know that, but it needs to be recognized as we will now take this information, do whatever update we can do within the current law and guidance of the county for next Tuesday. I think we'll also try to update all of you if there's any change in Sacramento via the governor's pen in the next couple of days. At least give you this FYI, knowing that that will have to be accommodated into the amended budget that will come to you in July. So that's just a couple of key points I wanted to share with you as we work very closely to move this budget to finality. Thank you.
Okay, before we have board comments and questions from Ms. Salkeld and also for Ms. Alvarez, we have a couple of public speakers, a citizen and Jeff Nelson.
Well, I noted that the school supplies were cut tremendously. It's very disconcerting how much school supplies were cut, because I know how much pressure that's going to be putting on students and their families to come up with donations for that. I don't understand why health benefits couldn't be set up so that employees who select the most expensive plans pay the difference between the lowest cost plan and the very expensive plans. That would free up money so that we could put that money back into school supplies for the children to have. Also, where is the report monitoring early education? As you know, that program has had problems. It lost $2 million that had to come out of the general fund because people weren't doing their jobs correctly regarding the grant. There should be a report about that so that you can have some security that it's being run correctly. Also, why is there not a report of the savings of the attrition model today? It's pretty late in the year. It's just a couple weeks before the final budget adoption. It should be here. And finally, the general budget loaned $18 million to food services. So does that mean that there's a hole in the budget? Is that right? Am I thinking that right? If there's a hole in the budget of that much, how are you going to make up that difference? And then again, you don't meet with the California Department of Education until Friday, so you still have that outstanding debt of $13.4 million that you were found were misspent on inappropriate items. So I don't see that addressed in this budget, and it's very, very tight, very, very tight. Anything that shifts in here is a problem for this school district.
Jeff Nelson from Mira Mesa, formerly a parent of students in this district, and now that they're kind of in graduate school, just a citizen. Before the approval of this coming year's budget, there is an issue that needs to be addressed by this district. Currently, hundreds of high school students are being assigned to attend expository writing courses. This course, the material used in this course glorifies extreme risk-taking behavior. The theme of the material used in this course, and I have to paraphrase, I can't use the language that's in the material. The theme is, screw your stupid rules. Now, I'm under the impression that there have already been some incidents where rules have been disregarded by high school students, and I can't be the only person in this room who thinks that this is not a good idea. Now, time is short. There's only a few days available for the district to review and replace the materials used in this course, and I recommend that this be done. Thank you.
Mr. Brewer.
So thank you, Ms. Salkeld. I guess, and I understand your point and the superintendent's point that the budget that we approve next week is likely not going to incorporate our analysis of what's just happened in Sacramento, and so we'll do a revised budget in July. But the challenge, I mean, and that's the way that we'll proceed. What's difficult about that, however, is that what just happened in Sacramento makes fundamental changes to the assumptions, that we're seeing that's built into this budget, particularly on the revenue side. And I think the probably the biggest, in addition to the kind of the framework of the LCFF, I think the biggest change is if we go to slide 7. And maybe Martha could help with this. We've been working in a kind of a framework where the state passes a budget for K-12, and then we've got a revenue limit deficit factor that we apply to that. And what that is essentially saying is the state is saying, we're not complying with Prop 98. We're not meeting our obligations under Prop 98, and therefore we're deficiting districts by the amount that we are failing to, by the amount of the obligation that we're failing to meet. And we've been dealing with that kind of framework for several years now. My understanding is that the LCFF is completely changing that framework. And that what the LCFF is doing is saying, rather than we're going to continue to violate Prop 98, what the state is now saying is we're going to meet our obligations under Prop 98, and we have a commitment to get districts back to your pre-recession 2008 levels. And the cost of doing that is roughly $16 billion to the state. But we're going to get you there in pieces over the next 7 or now, I guess, 8 years. And so when we look at page 7 and we look at some of the assumptions here, the assumption around continuing to apply a 19% revenue limit deficit, and then the way that factors into these revenue limit adjustments, $306 for 13-14, but then the $131 and $163, that's where I think, if I'm correct, we're going to see the biggest difference in the budget that we put together, that we revised in July, which is based on the state framework. So I wonder if Jenny or Martha, if you could just comment a little bit on that. Yes, go ahead.
To your point, Trustee Barrett, I'm going to defer that to Martha, because that's the same conversations we've been having in finance as to what those particular components of this, what is the revenue limit, and now what will be with the LCFF.
Yeah.
So I'm going to defer that to Martha based on those specifics.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So I think something to keep in mind is that this budget today that's being considered, that will be adopted next week, it's assuming the current law.
Right.
So having EIA and the current law revenues. And so your point's well taken. I think that as I continue to evaluate LCFF and what it means for schools, specifically San Diego Unified, that might be something that could potentially be eliminated, that there won't be a deficit factor because the state will be providing more resources for schools. Something to keep in mind about LCFF, it will be the goal of the legislature is to implement LCFF completely by 2020, 2021. What that means, that the intent of the legislature and the governor is that by 2020, 2021, it will get schools back to the 07-08 level. And so gradually they'll be providing those resources to get schools out of that hole.
And with the cost of living adjustments.
Yes. So currently under LCFF, the language that, again, the governor has yet to approve, but it was a compromise. It's assuming that there would be a COLA every year, and I believe it's like on an average of 1.9% on every year, but again, that has to be yet determined. And I think by the time that Jenny and the finance teams come back in July for final approval of a more accurate revenue projections, that will be reflected in the budget that you ultimately adopt for the 2013-2014 fiscal year. So I think just keeping in mind, this is assuming current law. LCFF was passed, and it will be implemented starting in 2013-2014. And the numbers that I will be confirming in Sacramento with the Department of Finance and Department of Education is regarding our counts of English learners and low-income kids, because those will ultimately impact the supplemental grant, the concentration grant, and how many of those additional resources will the school receive. But in terms of the base grant, there was a slide that showed that, kind of the idea of what will be the aspirational goal of 2020, 2021.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
So But the way you've been talking about it is basically for these 8 years, as far as you know, it's a steady progression over the 8 years, as opposed to faster or slower or something like that. Dividing into 8 years.
It's still a linear projection.
Right.
That's what they've been saying for some time now.
So from, I don't know if you have, from
And that's one
13-14 to 2021, what numbers are we going from and to?
That's one clarification that I will be seeking for the Department of Finance tomorrow, whether we should be expecting an 1/8 additional, funding every year between now and the 8th year implementation, a full implementation, or whether it will be a smaller percentage the first year of LCFF implementation, and then gradually progressing to the higher rate by full implementation. That's a clarification that we'll be pursuing. And by next week, Janet should be able to provide that information through me.
But full implementation, I think, and getting to President Evans' question, is hundreds of millions of dollars additional to where we are today. If we were fully implemented today, we would have hundreds of millions of dollars of additional revenue compared to what we're working with today.
I won't say hundreds of millions of dollars, but there will be additional revenues for the district. So the amount is yet to be determined, but there would be additional support, assuming that there's no more recessions and other, issues in the economy that would cause the state to then start giving deferrals to the districts or giving a revenue limit factor.
But I'm just trying to get, I've seen different numbers, but if we're going from $6,000 to $9,000 or something per pupil, that's...
So it will be more money for the school district. What's being considered now is how much of that money will be, it will be more money. It's just determining what's that amount.
But we should be able to calculate what we will get in 2020.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you're saying that the speed is, the rate is open to question, but we should have that number which factors in the 1.9% COLA and so forth. Okay.
And so it's just a matter of clarifying from the Department of Finance about what to expect in terms of that implementation over the 8th year course. What percentage will it be over each year, so we can know, in year 4, what percentage will we be receiving versus by the full implementation, which would be 100% of that amount.
So where does class size reduction stand with all of this?
Currently, it's being requested would be at 24:1 unless locally bargained. So it'd be for K to 3rd grade would be 24:1 ratio.
Beginning in 2014-15.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, this is the first reading, so we will approve this at our next board meeting. Thank you very much to both of you. Okay, the property inventory and property management plan update, Mr. Koba.
I will ask Deputy Soup Phil Stover to update you. This is a requirement we have.
This is a requirement that the committee that you appoint to look over the excess property submits each year to you. And we have 26 excess properties, and this basically outlines for you what the properties are, what their use are, the revenues we get from those properties, and their recommendations. It has not changed significantly from last year. Where it has changed is basically due to adding more information to it, clarifying some things we have not clarified in the past, and obviously some changes due to changes in income and use of the property because of actually selling them.
Okay, so we all have the list of what the sites are and what they're currently being used for. Okay? Do we need to approve this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved and second. Okay, please vote. Okay, that passes 5-0. And then the board direction to staff to investigate a common modifying calendar for 14-15. And this is direction to staff to begin looking at this depending upon funding.
Yeah. This is a item that has been evolving and growing over time. Phil and I and Trustee Beiser have talked at length about this, and I believe that between Phil and Trustee Beiser, we have identified an approach and a direction, and I wanted to defer to whether Trustee Beiser wanted to comment on this particular agenda item.
Yeah, the idea of looking at or exploring ways to go to a common calendar have been born out of going around and visiting schools that are currently year-round for the last couple of years. A lot of staff and parents overwhelmingly want to go to a common calendar with maybe one or two exceptions. And so I think that what we ought to do is we ought to make sure that before we take action, we reach out and listen to all the different stakeholders in the school district, especially those that are affected or impacted in these year-round schools. I think that I'm confident that staff will incorporate and involve a wide number of teachers, staff, administrators, and parents in these year-round schools to solicit their input and their ideas so that what does come back to the school board is reflective of the needs and wishes of those of all the stakeholders involved. The other thing that we've talked about over the last couple of years is the cost of conversion. The upfront cost is pretty steep, and so I have reiterated many times over the last 2 years. Maybe exploring different ways of adopting it, maybe looking at a phase-in program over many years, because the benefit is that we've looked at, and finance I think has mentioned this over the last couple, CFOs have all concurred, that once we've adopted a common calendar, then the school district can realize as much as $2 to $4 million a year savings every year into perpetuity after that, because there's definite economic benefit by having everybody on the same calendar. And so those are long-term economic benefits. So there's the short-term upfront costs that we need to look at, and I look forward to hearing what the staff comes up with as different options. Not just one option for the board to look at, but maybe 2 or 3 different options that we can consider. Phase-in programs, and things like that. And then the other thing that is important that we've talked about at this school board before are this is a one-time expense up front to realize long-term savings of millions of dollars every year. And so that might be an opportunity in the event that maybe our real estate sales are much greater than what we've projected or anticipated. So there's lots of different pieces to this, and I don't want to, come down and say, well, let's do this. I really want to have staff look into it and involve all the different stakeholders on a broad scale, not just say, oh, we had 2 parents involved. I think we need to look at a lot of different people involved.
Your motion is to direct the staff to do this?
I move I-6, sorry.
Okay, second? A second? Okay. And I would support it. I think we need to make clear, it is reaching out to the stakeholders, but we've discussed this a lot and having a really, really clear picture financially in terms of what the costs are, but especially in terms of the savings, because since we haven't ever done it, we've just made some sort of wild back-of-the-envelope guesses about the savings. But when we're serious about doing it, because there may be some savings that we can incorporate that we're not even thinking about now. Once we have everybody in a common calendar, there may be things that we could reduce or incorporate, or there'd be different kind of costs that we might reduce that we're not thinking about. So, and that's going to make a big decision, because if we're talking about $10 or $12 million costs and it's $2 million savings, and we'll find out it's a $4.5 million savings, that's going to make a big difference in our decision.
I think this is consistent with other requirements or requests from the board. Get to true costs rather than from instinct or guess or assumption. And that's what we want to do.
Okay, let's...
I agree and support this. The one question was, in some of the presentations that have been given preliminarily to clusters on this, there's also been discussion, and I'm not saying, of moving the opening of school earlier before Labor Day and ending it sooner as one of the options. And I think if those are going to be looked at as well, we should also analyze the pluses and minuses of that, both from a revenue and academic.
Yep.
Yeah, and there are those who have raised some reasons why to do it and said that it would benefit children academically. I don't know if there's any data to support that or not. But I think if we're going to do this, since it's been raised, we should also include that in the analysis.
Yeah, that way both the calendar committee and the school realignment committee have discussed that as potentially advantageous, especially the ability to end the first semester in secondary before winter break. And have a clean break there, not have to come back and take finals or something after the Christmas break. So that I would envision a group of finance folks, of instructional people, operational people, and designated folks to go out to all the clusters, get all the feedback across the district, because we do have approximately 58, 59 year-round schools, basically in the northeast and the southeast of our district. And those would be the areas most impacted, and we would have to really get out there and talk to the folks.
Mr. President, over here. I'll order that. Hey, sorry, still here. Sorry, no, something that struck a note with me was mentioning finishing first semester before winter break academically, and also I think if you push the calendar earlier in the year, that gives you 2 more weeks, not only for that first semester, but for APs and all of the state testing. And as far as that's concerned, I know, especially in history courses, the teachers are always pressed at the end of the year. They're only at I don't know, the Cold War, and they're supposed to be up to the modern day, and so they have to cram and rush in all of that last-minute history before the state test in APs. So that might be
Well, let's just skip the Cold War.
Something to investigate.
We won it, right?
Well, if you well, if you finish earlier in May, you actually be able to go to work on your family farm, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's
the original idea.
Yep.
Okay. Please vote on this item. Okay,
Mr. President, on this item, I'd like to make an additional motion of a potential option to pursue for funding. As we know, the military has expressed specifically the concern that affects the military families, the timing of their transfers and the timing of these schools. We've talked about this for a while. So I'd like to ask the board to make a motion that we direct the new Director of Intergovernmental Relations to work with Ms. Alvarez to pursue potential Department of Defense funding for making this transition, since military kids are disproportionately impacted, and it could be 1 year or a phased year. But here's a source that, they have $1 trillion budget. All we need is $14 million. So I would recommend that we specifically ask them to start looking and meeting with our congressional representatives on that. Is
there a second to get more money from the Department of Defense? Okay. Okay, moved and seconded. Okay. Please vote on that motion. Mr. Okay, we've got everybody there. Okay. And at this point, moving through the agenda, we would be finishing, except that certain people pulled items from the consent agenda. Okay, so let's, the items that we have pulled are starting with item 12.
Okay.
Ms. Foster.
So 12 and 13 kind of together, and I just wanted to share that I've received some emails stating that the current fee structure as depicted in the agenda is unfair and charges San Diego Unified a fee based on our entire student population, and that the problem with this is that our entire student population does not participate in sports. So we are being assessed a fee for students that do not receive the benefit, and that there's possibly a competitive disadvantage of some type. And I just really wanted to ask, the staff, if you've heard this conversation or could speak to it, provide some clarity.
This comes up with some regularity, and all of the participating districts are being charged based on their enrollment, a snapshot in time, and not based on how many athletes or how many teams they field, but on their student population. And that, I believe, has been the mechanism for a very long time for the history of the CIF. The only way to appreciate how to charge is by student enrollment, at least in a broader dialogue with all of the districts and all of the leagues that are involved here. I think, though, they've looked at, with the new leadership of the last year, plus they've created a number of working groups and committees to talk about fees, not only membership fees, but there are charges applied for tournaments and for box offices. What we, I think, have to remember is that San Diego Unified fields more teams than any district, just based on scale and size. And so our kids benefit from the fact that they have more competitions and more schedules, or deeper schedules. And so we've recognized and been part of that for the history of our membership in CIF. If there were an alternative, certainly we could bring it forward. We have representation. In fact, E13 is our annual appointment of our representatives to CIF, which is each year consistently a mix of Bruce Ward, our program manager for athletics and physical education, a principal or two, and an athletic director or two. So we have a representative voice on the ruling bodies of the CIF, but it's been built on the enrollment as a general fee membership.
And starting a new section of the CIF, have you heard anything or something?
There has been discussion. Sweetwater Unified School District Superintendent Ed Brand and I have talked about that. I wished him his best in a visioning, but there is no program or structure in place. He's interested in, not to take any words out of Ed's mouth wrongly, in breaking away Sweetwater and a few interested districts that are in the San Diego field, and combining with some Imperial County schools. And at one point I told them I wanted to work within the new leadership and the open and inclusiveness they've demonstrated. And I don't see any value in our high school teams going to Imperial County long distances at additional costs, and perhaps walk away from some of the historic rivalries that we enjoy right in our own community. So I basically said I wasn't interested, but if he would like to pursue that with the new superintendent, that's certainly his consideration.
Were there any recommendations that made sense that brought it closer to home?
Again, he has just a vision, and unless he has recently brought further granularity, it was all about trying to look inland and further east to be competitive.
Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve these items, 12 and 13? Move. Second?
Yeah, sir. Yes.
Okay, please vote on 12 and 13. Okay, we will now move to Area 51.
You had item 32, 27 and 30.
We had 27 and 30 also.
Yeah, I had them in a different order for some reason.
I'm just doing numeric order.
Okay, let's go to 51. I'm already flipped it.
Okay.
51,
Area 51.
27, 30.
Are we doing, which one are we doing now?
51.
We're doing 51?
Now I have to
Okay.
find 51.
So what are the implications to our attrition model, and can we speak to the classifications?
Okay, so superintendent, I mean, these are reclassification items, which from my understanding before, is that if these people are doing additional duties, we're required to pay them accordingly. And the alternative would be to hire another person to do the additional duties, is what I've heard in previous reclassifications.
Yeah, there is no implication here to the attrition model itself. There's an OTBS reclassification and two AASD classifications. There's one in Dr. Fulcher's side, there's one in the finance, and there's one in work processing in the OTBS ranks. So it's across the board in the district. What these are again the studies that HR has done, indicating that a person is doing duties that have exceeded those in their job description, not in the sense of amount, but kind or nature of duties. And so they are new and different kind of duties. And then again, in the case of shrinking resources, there's many cases here. For example, the budget person here performs incredibly intricate analysis with Excel and pivot tables, and really is the backbone. When you ask for data and information, this finance person is the one who does that. I can't speak for Dr. Fulchers, but I'm sure there's a similar kind of situation. So that's what these are. They're not new positions. They're nothing where someone is leaving and it would impact the attrition plan by doing this.
Okay. Is there a motion on this one?
Move.
Second? Okay, please vote. Okay, now we'll go back to 27.
The reason why I pulled the item is because it was brought to our attention that this has not been a requirement in the past, and so that this would be an unnecessary reclassification.
You're talking about, Mr. Bosler, the admin to confidential administrative assistant to.
Am I talking about the wrong one?
27?
No, you are the specific person he's saying on there is the admin too.
I believe so, yeah.
Which item are we on? Number?
E27, right?
Yeah.
E27.
There's an attached chart.
These items,
When we mentioned bilingual,
Yes.
right?
yeah.
That is C27, right?
Yeah, these positions are not reclassifications. They don't fall in the same category as what we just talked about, where HR has done a reclass. These positions actually reflect promotions that people have gotten because of either board action or because of a higher placement, because they bumped up into a different category. So if you look on the chart that follows this item, you'll see there's about, 8 or 9 of them. Several principals, the new superintendent, the HRO. These are the natural, normal processes of growth into positions. Now, the particular item, obviously someone has gone into a confidential administrative 2 position where someone made the decision that position was to be a bilingual position. I don't know the exact details or history. I see Jenny's coming forward. Maybe she does.
The position that was referenced previously is not one of these positions.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes it clean.
All right. Okay, move for approval?
Yes, I move.
Okay, second. Is there a second? There must be a second. Second, okay. Okay, that takes care of that, and then the remaining item is item... Okay. Seconded by Marnie Foster. Please revote based on the fact that Marnie seconded it.
Can you reiterate that?
So the concern that was raised in the audience is moot. It's not relevant. It's not even what was being discussed or just, okay.
Okay.
But I will follow up. I will commit to follow up and see what the issue is.
Okay, item 30. Who pulled item 30? Okay.
I sent a memo. I'm just sent a revised memo, and my revised memo, and this has to do with a special audit, allocation for special audit to be hired to assist in the cafeteria fund review. My revised motion before you supports that action. It doesn't undo that, but at the same time, while I am absolutely confident and thrilled that we have one of the healthiest school lunch programs in the country, there's been a lot of questions raised over financial reimbursements. The most recent thing was the gift cards, and this is a significant amount of money regarding a lot of federal funds as well. So what I would propose is that we, like many issues where there's questions and concerns raised, that the oversight and review of this department, and the issues that have been raised, including the gift card issue, be put in the hands of the auditor and the audit committee to review it. And secondly, I propose that we ask the County Office of Ed to take a detailed review of the history and analysis of all the fund transfers outside of the specific audit that's going to be done. I think it's important, if we're going to restore confidence, that we have an independent review done that's not overseen by district staff, and then we'll just get all the facts and the history of this. So once again, I support the staff recommendation. However, I'm also in addition proposing that we ask the auditor and audit committee to get involved in this process, and that we ask the superintendent, ask the county superintendent to hire a independent auditor to look at the entire program, which we would underwrite the cost. So that's my motion.
So you're moving to approve the item along with
these additions.
With these 3 additions to
Right.
it. Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Question. Have you spoken to the county? We're making the recommendation for them to...
No, I have not, but we in the past, when we had an issue at one of our schools, allegations of grade inflation, and we had done some internal reviews, we had asked the County Office of Ed to do that, so to make sure that things are so controversial, issue of grades and potential questions about the use of our funds, that we make sure we actually do an analysis. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars a year. There's serious allegations of misuse of funds, not just the charging issue, but for a decade of a gift card. And I just want to make sure I'm confident that we're spending these funds wisely. And I don't say we're not, but these are significant issues. But if the board is fully satisfied that the department, all the funds are spent appropriately and no concerns, then you can just, if there's not a second of the motion, then it's not on the floor.
I mean, I would just, a couple comments. I mean, one is that I'm assuming that that as far as the district auditor, the audit committee looking at this, that's already within their purview to look at these issues.
Well, to date, as far as I know, it's all the investigations and analysis have been done by the departments and managers who have overseen these departments, and has not done an independent review. And I'm not saying that I'm questioning the ethics or veracity of the department heads, but that's why we have an independent auditor, an audit committee, which 2 board members sit on, to make sure that we go the extra mile to give the board and the public confidence that things are being handled appropriately.
Well, I guess I was just saying that looking at this number 2, it sounds like it's already the case that the district auditor and audit committee can look at that.
Yeah, if I could just make a couple comments on this item, just to clarify for the public, if anybody's still watching, and for the board, to clarify several things. There has been no allegations whatsoever from any oversight agency at the state or anywhere else that we have misspent food service funds. None. Zero. The gift cards were approved by the board. They were approved by CDE, and they've been in existence for probably 15 years being used in this district, number one. Number two, and that's not anywhere near tens of millions of dollars, even if someone found that in fault.
So are you saying it's proper? The expenditure of those gift funds are proper?
Yes. I'm saying it has been approved by the California Department of Education and this board. That's number one. Number two, there has been no indication, perhaps except in the press, that we have committed any misfeasance, malfeasance, misspent, misappropriated any student funds. What is in question is the methodology that we use to calculate the utilities that we charge to the department and the custodial costs that we charge to the department. No one, and I've been in every meeting, none of the auditors, none of the child nutrition people have ever suggested to us in any way, shape, or form, number one, that the charges are not appropriate to be charged to the department, or number two, that the charges are in excess of what should be appropriated. The question at this point is a question of a methodology of calculating the amounts. that we are charging. We have, for example, said we have charged $3 million a year to the program. No one from Sacramento, CDE, the Child Nutrition Department, nor the auditors have suggested that's an inappropriate charge nor an inappropriate amount. We have calculated that based on a very complicated software program that we use to determine how many hours or minutes our custodians spend doing food service work, down to the 2-minute increments. What CDE would like us to do is have our custodians clock in the morning, clock out when they begin working in the cafeteria, clock back in afterwards. And
Mr. President, forgive me. I specifically, in my proposal, wasn't even talking about I don't want to get into the whole defensive review. I support legitimate reimbursement of expenses by this district and by the enterprise fund. I support it, and we should defend it if done accurately. My suggestion goes back even further. I believe we have to go back a number of years further, and if we want to get into this, I have been informed by district personnel that they believe in past years that numbers have been stated, have said that we need X dollars in the general fund to fill a hole, and that exact dollar amount has been put in from the enterprise fund.
Scott, I second your motion.
Okay. So all I'm saying is, instead of us being defensive and stating everything's wonderful and everything's fine, that we have an independent outside source to do an analysis and get the facts. And whatever the facts are, I as a board trustee will be responsible for the good, the bad, or the ugly. We should not be afraid to publicly go out and air our linen, dirty or otherwise. I have not, and so that's all I'm saying. And I've not specified any specific allegation except to say, until tonight, except to say that this is too important a program, too many questions be answered to not do an independent review. And then it could be the review would say everything's wonderful.
On behalf of the staff, I would welcome an independent review. I have no fear of that whatsoever.
Good.
Not the slightest, tiniest bit.
Good.
I don't understand the purpose of the county office of education.
Right, that's where I'm confused.
The purpose is we have auditors who work for the district. These same auditors get, and I'm not, once again, at the city of San Diego, KPMG, one of the best known auditors in the world, lied on audit forms and ended up suspending the city's bond rating. As board members with fiduciary responsibility, if you use the same vendors again and again and again, and I've seen many times on documents where they use the same boilerplate year after year and year, and staff gets comfortable with them, they develop relationships. We, as a standard practice, should change auditors every few years, outside auditors. I've brought that issue up many times. So if we then hire and use the same auditor who gets significant business from us to do an audit of this that our staff oversees, that our staff controls, that our staff will review, then I am not confident that, especially when staff is already extremely defensive and already determined that everything's wonderful, and once again, all I'm saying is the County Office of Ed sends a message both to the public and to us that we're confident that the process was absolutely clean without any bias. And that's why I believe the County Office of Ed can do it. If we say we want staff to do an independent review, well, we're saying we want staff to review it themselves on this. And that's why, and once again, I'm tried to keep this very general and say this is an important program. I don't know if there's been anything inappropriate done or not. But all I'm saying is let us do an analysis of cash flows, moving funds back and forth, expenditures, and if we need to do things, maybe it's just efficiency increases. So that's the purpose for going outside on something that there is a lot of public scrutiny on for good reason.
I guess where I'm a little confused is the state is an outside entity that is currently auditing us. And how, I don't understand the reason to say the state, and go to the county when the state is already doing their own independent audit.
is the state doing, how far back is the state going? Are they looking at these two particular items? I want us to go back quite a number of years further and to make sure that it's done and that it's, you know, it's not as if the only issue is whatever is going to be discussed Friday. Once again, independent of what's happening Friday, I believe we should do an in-depth analysis of the last decade or so of the expenditures just to make sure that we're comfortable that all procedures and processes were followed appropriately. And maybe he'll come back and say everything was wonderful.
What hold
Mr.
on.
Beiser, speak.
Yeah, just let me chime in real quick, and then we can do the question. What I think we ought to do is, since we already have an outside independent auditor, the state, and that process is still, you know, going through, still has some steps to be finished, that I think that what we ought to do is let that outside auditor, the state, finish that process first, and then we can revisit the idea of then, you know, based upon that outcome, of reaching back, you know, into the past. That's just what I think would be a logical way to look at this, and that's kind of my disposition, is to just go ahead and continue the current outside auditor, the state of California, CDE, let that process finish, then, you know, we can revisit this issue at a later date.
Okay, as I understand it, and correct me, that the meetings with the state have to do with two particular issues on the transfers back and forth, and that's what you're going to be discussing with them on Friday.
There are 4 issues.
Okay.
Really, there's 4 issues: custodial charges, utility charges, interest payments, and the accounting methodology we use to track dollars that we loan to the program, because they have federal reimbursement is slow, and that comes back, that the department pays
And how
back
long
to us.
of a period are they looking at?
They've looked at 3 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 years back.
That's my point, is that I believe we need to go back further, notwithstanding whatever the state says, and look at, go back further. Because even whatever they say on this particular issue, we still have I think, some legitimate questions going back further.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to reiterate my position. I'm going to be voting no on the current motion, and hopefully, if that goes down, then we can, you know, have a follow-up motion to go forward with the item unamended. Because I think first we need to go back at 3 years with the state and see how that audit. Let's finish that audit first before we, you know, go down another rabbit hole.
Okay. All right, so we'll vote on Mr. Barnett's motion as outlined here. Okay. 4-1.
I'll move the
1 in
item.
favor.
Second.
E30.
Okay. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item 30, which is the approving for Christy White to perform this service.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, 5-0.
President, could I just ask Superintendent, so Mr. Stover talked about the gift cards as a practice going back several years and being approved by the board. Does the board need to then change this policy? I mean, my guess is that there's pretty strong consensus among the board members not to move forward with this gift. And I'm not sure when the board first approved this or when it...
It was in the late 90s. We could certainly bring you back a package of what's happened and what it's about, and you could certainly
I think
vote to.
Also, Mr. Brewer, I think Ms. Carbucci has to engage.
Okay.
OSS, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been a cooperative effort with
So if we could have
OSS.
something come back to us to discuss the item. Yeah.
Well, part of the problem is that happened 10 years ago. And that's part of what my review is, to look at the history of this department. And we're picking one thing out that we happen to know about because it made the newspaper. So I'm formally tonight requesting that this board initiate an investigation into allegations that there were transfers from food services to the general fund specifically to fill budget holes and not as an intent to reimburse the general fund for activities. And I would ask that the auditor review those allegations and this is from the that I've been told about.
I would support that as part of what we're asking the auditor to do.
Well, the auditor's not, these are going back quite a number of years to the previous superintendent.
Okay.
Mr. President, before we adjourn, could we reconvene in closed session? Bond counsel would like to address the board on a previous issue.
Okay. So that...
She's got a flight to catch.
This concludes, and we will adjourn this session and go into closed session on an unrelated item. Just enough for someone to write some stuff about now. Those allegations.